Guys, welcome to Squatch Talk. I'm Pat. Hope you're all doing well tonight. Hello, chat. You're looking beautiful as always. With us tonight is a guy that's been on the show. He's known as the Sasquatch Detective, and trust me, he is. I don't want him vetting my life. I can tell you that. And he's been on the show actually a couple of times, man. Not too long ago when I did like a free for all. He wanted to jump in. That was cool. We had fun. And but tonight he's gonna just kind of come on as a guest, and we're gonna open it up here with Mr. Steve Kulls. How you doing tonight, bud?
Hey, Pat, I'm doing great. How's yourself?
I'm well. Things are going good, man, in the Turner household. So yeah, man, let's jump right into it. You've been on here before.
Yep.
You kind of have an open door invitation, really. Usually we do our panel discussions, and you're always welcome to be a panel member as well. And you kind of by default, I think, will be tonight. But let's just open it up, man. Tell us
Yeah, I
about
heard there's a
yourself.
gaggle waiting behind me somewhere.
Yes, right. Yeah. So yeah, man, tell us about what it's like to do Sasquatch detective world. And I don't know, God, you've been doing this for 20 years, maybe? Something like
2022.
I'm sorry.
on the cusp of 23. I started sometime in 98 doing this. I started doing a lot of book research, and then slowly end of 98, I started reaching out to other researchers and started making connections and inroads and started investigating whether or not this stuff is true or not. And as it turned out, I truly believe that this is a real phenomenon going on.
Right.
Unfortunately, like every other phenomenon there is, be it paranormal, be it UFOs, be it dogmen, chupacabra, whatever, Loch Ness, there is there is always a smattering of hoaxes, and there's always a smattering of misidentifications, and there's always a smattering of pseudoscience and people not really putting an investigative process to what they're doing. And that's unfortunate because a lot of misinformation gets out there. I've been an investigator. I've worked fires. I've worked I've worked fires. I've worked including arson cases. I've worked auto accidents. I've worked burglaries. I've worked many other types of insurance claims. I have been in both sides of the legal process, investigating and a criminal side and on the legal side. I also investigate some other things that may find my interest in being a private investigator. I have a little more inroads and a little more things to do, backgrounds and searches on people that the normal Joe on the street doesn't have. I've come up, I'm pretty much believe we had a missing person in the Albany area in 1998. And I'm pretty certain that I have who most likely was responsible for it. And it turns out that he is long dead now. It turned out that it was actually a serial killer that actually got caught for what he did in Anchorage, Alaska, is by the name of Israel Keys. And I'll give you a little background on that. It's probably one of the most fascinating things I had done one of the things I like to do is I like to do a lot of criminal psychology, criminal profiling, things like that. So when I'm quiet and I'm not necessarily doing Bigfoot stuff, I'm looking at other stuff that I find fascinating. And that all has to do with when I became a forensic interviewer in 1994. I have probably interviewed almost 600 people, and most of the time, probably like an 85%, 90% ratio, I get a confession and an admission of some sort of criminal activity or guilt. And not only did I take a system in 1994, I also took another system in 1999. So I'm very well versed in being able to flip those two systems to basically to benefit the psychology of the process, because forensic interviewing, aka interrogation, and believe me, I've watched First 48 or some of the other cop shows that they have these interrogations, and I'm going, oh, they're blowing it. They're blowing it. They had the guy there, but then they,
right.
it's a psychology process. And unfortunately, it makes you say things sometimes you may not agree with, but you do it to gain, to show empathy towards the criminal and make them more sympathetic. And it lessens the moral implication of what they've done to say, okay, yeah, this is what happened. So that's a big part of that process. Now, people will say, well, it never work on me. Well, you're not the guilty party. You have to actually be guilty of something for it to actually work and for me to be investigating it, because that's the linchpin. If you're not guilty of something, or not guilty of something in particular that I'm investigating, there's no way I can get that linchpin to make you cave. So that's the interesting thing on that. But yes, this case goes back to 1998 in Albany. This young lady went missing. She was a SUNY Albany student. She went missing after leaving her job at Crossgates Mall. She got on a bus. She went over to the SUNY campus in Albany. She got off the bus and nobody ever saw her again. They did find, as it turned out, that they did find her name badge in the parking lot of SUNY. She has been missing now since 1998. Actually, it was the same year I entered Bigfoot research. As it turns out, there was a gentleman who used her debit card, and the police had actually found the guy that was responsible. Turns out he was a cook at SUNY Albany, and they cleared him. He claims that he had found the card in the parking lot, but how did he know the PIN? Well, this goes back to Israel Keys, who most famously, it was this whole kidnapping was caught on video. He grabbed this young barista out of a coffee kiosk in Anchorage at 11 o'clock at night, and she ended up disappearing, and nobody knew where she went. So when they finally caught up with him, it turns out that he turned out to be a serial killer, and he was like one of the most dangerous serial killers ever, they thought, because throughout the United States, he had buried kill kits. And the funny thing is, he does have a connection in New York State. He owned a home close to the Canadian border in New York, and he was responsible for murdering a married couple in Burlington, Vermont, committing a bank robbery in Tupper Lake, New York. Now, the interesting thing is when the FBI interviewed this guy, he had said that, and this was in 2012, he had said that he became what he was 14 years prior. He's been now 14 years prior is 1998, the same year that girl went missing. Mm-hmm. But the funny thing is she went missing in March of 1998. Again, she went to SUNY Albany. Israel Keys, at the time in 98, was living on the Canadian border, which is a good 3, 4, 5 hours from here. Well, as it turned out, when Keys enlisted in the Army, he enlisted in Albany, New York in July of 98, just 4 months after her disappearance. So there's just too much coincidence there. And one of his key signatures is he would collect the victim's debit card and scratch their PIN number on the card. So the big thing is I believe that the reason why that cook knew the PIN number of the card, because it was scratched on the front of the card, and that would directly tie it to Israel Keys, as will be the enlistment. And I don't understand why he would enlist in Albany, New York, when he could have enlisted in nearby Plattsburgh, New York, which is only about an hour and a half from where he lived. So instead, he comes 4 hours south to enlist in Albany, New York. So there is definitely a tie. It's very strange that he would enlist in Albany, but so.
Well, that's a very interesting investigation.
Yes,
that you're tied to, and it's actually quite fascinating, especially being so long ago, which is the further away in time you get, sometimes the harder it is to
right. Now, the interesting thing is that Israel Keys loved putting bodies in parks. They eventually found that barista. She was actually under the ice, in the lake. in one of the national parks in Alaska. And he had admitted to some other killings in national parks. Everywhere he went, there was a body found in a national park. He even admits that the two murder victims, he had buried them in their old home, but he'd taken their belongings, and their belongings he discarded in the Adirondack State Park. Now, the funny thing is I'm also, within that time period, 2005 to 2006, I'm investigating two cold case murders in Saratoga County, which the bodies were each deposited in a different state park, one in the Daketown State Forest and another one in the Lake Desolation State Forest. And that's just within 10 miles of my home, either one. One's 5 miles, the other one is about 7 or 8 miles. So they were deposited in those state parks too, which is kind of Israel Key's MO. And it took them a while. It took the first victim, it took them 1.5 years to find the body. The second victim only took him about 9 months. But that's the thing. He discards bodies in national parks in a similar manner in which these girls were discarded. So do I think it's Israel Keys? It could be, because this could have been a prowling ground for him for a while. So
yeah, that's interesting. I mean, those are pretty strong, I'd say strong, giant, big dots to start connecting. So I think that's fair.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, they're because of the in the case of the missing girl, a lot of the information is out there. I'm still waiting to get that piece on the credit card. Was the PIN number? I'm trying to get confirmation from the Albany PD. Was there an actual scratching of the PIN number on the card? Because that'd be the dead giveaway. That was Israel Keys' signature. The other two girls, that is just conjecture at this point, because there is so much information being withheld, such as manner of death. There is some smattering of how their, one girl's remains were found, but or manner of death. There isn't really an official manner of death in those two girls as well. So that kind of kills the victimology. It kind of kills the profile of that particular person in the manner, and of course the signature of how they killed them.
Fair enough.
Yep.
So I would think that applying these same kind of techniques, ways of thinking, actual investigating would actually be a lot easier in the Bigfoot world, but I don't know, maybe not.
It is. It really is. I don't speak on a lot of different topics because most of the stuff that comes out from the Bigfoot world is small potatoes. I feel somebody says, "Oh, I got these wonderful pictures." Yada yada yada. Yeah, whatever. If it starts making the rounds and on media, and people start, that's when I have to step in and go, okay, now I'm gonna bore my full weight on this and see if it. But there are signatures to hoaxing, and there are very similarities to hoaxing, and I have the first thing I set out when I started getting into this was developing. Well, first was my mission statement, which is my 5 tenets, but I've discussed that before. But I had to develop an investigation matrix. And this is what's going to keep you out of trouble. And there's a 5-step investigation matrix I use. And where investigators and people who do Bigfoot research, they skip some of these steps. And when you skip these steps, that's where you get into trouble. If you take step 1, 2, and then you go right to 5, you're in trouble because you have nothing to back your words up. You have no evidence. You have nothing, no weight at all on your shoulders. So it's always taking the initial report. How that ever comes in, usually it comes in via email or a Facebook message or, an online web report. So one of the things obviously is you make all needed necessary requests. Ask for a detailed written account. Complete audio, video, and photo evidence if available. So gather all the stuff they're claiming. And that's huge. If somebody's not willing to email you an original copy of a picture or a video and any of that surrounding those pictures and video, issue. A 5-second video of a Sasquatch or a 10-second video of a Sasquatch to me is useless. Well, what were you doing beforehand? Was there any video before? Was there any video after? Did you do any post research? Did you take pictures afterwards? No, we get these 5. And what was the story? What was the timeline of events? Where were they going from point A to point B? What were you doing there? How long did you spend there? Where did you travel from? When you were done with that, where did you go to next? Who did you talk to about it? Because these are all very important things. For example, somebody may say, hey, I had this, I got this video of this Bigfoot. Okay, who'd you tell? What do you mean who I told? Well, did you tell your wife? Well, yeah, I told my wife. Okay, can I talk to her? Oh, you see, now you're starting to put cracks in the fence because there are secondary witnesses. And even though hearsay is not admitted in a court of law, if your main witness talks to that person, and hence they're not a hearsay witness, they're a witness. They may be hearsay to what was seen, but they are a witness to an event. The event is not the Bigfoot. The event is the person saying they saw a Bigfoot. And that's what people forget. So that secondary witness is important. There was a case up in Whitehall, Sue Ross. She was a little girl, thought her brother was doing it. It was a little Bigfoot throwing rocks at her. And she thought it was her brother. And she turned around and here's this little 4-foot Bigfoot next to a tree jumping up and down. She got so scared, she ran home, told her mother. We talked to her mother. Her mother says, oh, yeah, I remember that day very clearly. Yeah, she came screaming in, said this little monkey thing was jumping up and down, throwing rocks at her. So there's your secondary evidence. So this story isn't necessarily made up. Could it be the imagination of a little girl? Maybe. But we know it's not a made up story. And that's why the secondary witness is always important. Those people that are layered into the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the Fords in Fouke, Arkansas. Every single one had a story. And even the ones that didn't see it had a story about the people who did. That's secondary. And that's the importance. That builds credibility. That builds faith in your story. So then the next step, the phone interview. Of course, you're going to do a phone interview after taking the written account. You want to make sure everything matches up. And then finally, the face-to-face admission or a face-to-face interview. And each step of the process, of course, the written report you're going to have a physical copy of. Ask when you do the phone interview, would you mind if I record this? And then when you face-to-face review them, either videotape or audio record them. Do it again. Because you want to have everything consistent. Now, if people object, oh, well, this seems like a little bit much. You're asking me. And the other questions, you got to ask these questions. Hey, in order for me to validate your story, this is for your benefit. I need to know everything. Do you take recreational drugs? Are you on psychiatric meds? Have you had anything tragic happen to you in the last few years? Did you lose a job in the last 6 months? Did you get divorced? Did you have a death in the family? Mr. Mike, the Mr. Mike saga, which happened years ago. This radio show host by the name of Lam Lamfair gets this old guy on the TV. He's talking about Sasquatch in his backyard Bigfoot. I remember us calling that, and the Sasquatch climbing all, and Mama was getting mad at the babies for climbing up the telephone pole. And then he made a comment about it was worried about them hitting the branches on the way down. And then we were like, branches on a telephone pole? So we knew there was holes in the story there. Two guys went out on behalf of Lam Lamfair. Turns out the guy lived in the middle of the town, and the guy was just completely imagining everything he was saying. But you look at the guy's background. He is a 70-year-old guy taking care of his 83-year-old sister who's an invalid, and he's living there by himself. She doesn't speak, has no so he's there by himself. And the only time he gets a break sometimes is if his daughter comes over to watch her so he can go to the store and pick up groceries for his dying sister. So, there is the brain matter and the loneliness and the boredom working at somebody. So was it malicious? No, it wasn't malicious. And that's why you got to be very careful about stuff like that, because most hoaxes are not malicious. There's somebody that has either a psychological need or psychological illness. And most of it's psychological need. I need to feel important. I need to feel special. I'm bored. I need to belong to something. I'm not. And that's how that all propagates. So once you get past these first 3 steps, and one of the things too is take initial report. Remember, if you want this stuff via email, you get an IP address to an email. So check that IP address. Where is that IP? Is the IP address, is the area code they're calling you from, is that all consistent with this Bigfoot report? It may all seem like a lot of work, but it's really not. Once you get the process down, it's really quick. Can you write me a written report? Yeah, sure, no problem. Boom, boom, boom. So you're getting it done. Then, okay, you get it. Can I call you quick? Yeah, can I record this? Okay, so what happened? Blah, 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 blah. Done. Half hour, you're done. You get the face-to-face interview doing the same thing. So it really happens quick. So if everything's matching up, then you move on to step number 4, which is the on-scene investigation, which is the recreation of the timeline. So many times people say, oh, I had this roadside crossing. Okay, where were you coming from? Well, I was coming from point A. Did you make any stops off? Well, yes, I stopped off at point B. I got some cigarettes, and I filled up with gas, and then I went to point C, which is where I saw my Bigfoot. Then I went on to point D. Okay, what was the time frame between all that? Then drive it yourself. Figure it out. Make sure it works. Because if it doesn't work, there's a problem. Right? Deploy any necessary, if it's a site where there's people, deploy any necessary equipment. Do your field investigation. Collect any evidence. That you got to submit out. Then follow-up investigations as necessary. None of this process should be. Now, obviously, if it's a roadside crossing, it's going to be a little more concise and really not that much. You're going to go there, you're going to look around, okay. And then, boom, okay, everything seems kosher, we can put this out. But incredible times, like people coming up with, pictures or photographs or FLIR or whatever, audio, that needs to be worked up. And that needs to go to the proper people. Really important, it goes to proper people.
I agree. And when it comes, let me ask you real quick, Steve,
sure.
Just on that point, when it comes to like any kind of photographic or thermal, like video, even, I think the most important thing is the transparency, or at least one of the most important things. Transparency, being willing to be transparent about your metadata. Because
absolutely.
That's why solves a lot of, it's photoshopped. It's this, it's that. Here's the metadata. This is what the camera saw.
Right. And that's why it's crucial. It's crucial for people to send you evidence not on Facebook, because Facebook compresses everything.
Right.
Facebook, the video doesn't matter. If you're going to give me audio, you're going to put it in a Dropbox account, and I'm going to get the raw video. If you're going to send me a photograph, you're going to send it to my email. And you're not going to send me only your enhanced photos. You're going to send me the original, because we need the metadata. Yes. The metadata will tell you a lot. I use a site called Photo Forensics. So starting with an F.
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah. That will give you your metadata. We can also run something called an ever level analysis test, which will tell you if it's a layered picture. Hence, that's how I busted Todd Standing. I got the picture from the Edmonton Sun, the actual newspaper, and before the blinking Bigfoot actually blinked, he was putting it out as a photograph, and that photograph was actually taken with a Canon camera. I forget which model number at this point in time, because I don't have the information in front of me. But then I ran it through. I had all the metadata, when it was taken, what time it was taken, what the ISO rating was, and all the camera settings were set on something that was supposed to be indoor that wasn't moving very fast. That's what the metadata told me. Well, you wouldn't do that in an outdoor photograph for a Bigfoot. And then I ran it through the ever level analysis test, and lo and behold, there was some foliage layered in front, which would explain why there's 2 layers of focus in it. The creature's focused, and the leaves or the foliage in front of the creature is in focus too, which the camera doesn't have 2 layers of focus. Everybody knows the reason why Bigfoot's blurry is because of all that stuff in front of the camera.
Right.
So obviously that kind of just blew his little picture away. And the Stanlings, they don't care. Oh, that's your opinion. Okay, whatever. and that's what you get in this. You have to have a thick skin to stand up. You have to have a thick skin to stand up to people who will give you nonsense. When the Stanlings argue about standing, they never argue about the facts. They'll make, drive-by statements. Oh, that's your opinion. Oh, that's fact.
Like they're emotionally attached to it.
Right.
Somehow.
Well,
invested in it, maybe.
Right.
Yeah. And it's hard, dude. I mean, I think it does become a matter of cherished belief sometimes, or blind faith, however you want to kind of put that. And we all know how that works out. I mean, it's almost like questioning religious belief.
And a lot of times it is. Well, religion is a belief, just like Bigfoot is a belief. And, you know, I always use the cardboard statement, just because this isn't real doesn't mean Bigfoot isn't.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But finally, the final step is publication. And that's before publication, you have to go through all the steps, and everything in that little green box is in order. You need to send any physical evidence to third party for verification and analysis. Hey, you know what? I'm going to step right out of this. I'm going to put this to the scientist. What he says goes. Collect the field notes and field team debrief. So you're going to talk to your team. What did you see? What happened? What were your feelings? What do you think is going on? Get everybody, you know, even though I may be a trained forensic investigator or a forensic interviewer, if somebody's watching me interview them, I want to get their feelings. What did you think? You know, what did you see? How did that person react?
Right.
You know, collect all the hypotheses and findings, and then you publish your analysis and hypotheses and any findings you may have. That, and only then, and that takes months. A picture comes out today, it shouldn't be out next week. It should be analyzed, reanalyzed, sent out to other people for third-party analysis. But everybody wants to be, you know, that I want to be really out there and put it out there real quick. And for the, you know, for the honest researchers, they're trying to, you know, that make this mistake. Like I say, you're skipping all the steps in the publication process, and that you can't do. You gotta stick with the process. The process will keep you safe. The process will justify what you say. You know, and that's really important. And what happens is when any one of these little processes is not followed, that opens you up. And when that opens you up, you know, for whatever reason, because you have egos involved, people get very angry and defensive and over defensive. And instead of saying, geez, you know what? I never thought of that. Let me go back and check. Mm-hmm. Instead, they're like, what do you mean? And then you got all invested into it. I don't get invested into my investigations. The way I look at it is, if something is correct and something is, you know, if somebody has a problem with what I do, they better have solid ground on what, you know, on the reason why they think it's wrong. If they don't have a solid reason and they only have an opinion, then that's a big difference, because everything I try to do always has some piece of evidence attached to it. You know, whether it be, again, Standing, Dyer, Biscardi, Linda Newton Perry, that knucklehead from Ohio, Salt Fork, the two knuckleheads from Salt Fork State Park, the Squatch Master, and this other guy with the Bigfoot tooth. You know, you've got to have some substantial evidence to combat me with. But normally, what happens is you get these trollistic attacks, accusations of jealousy, accusations of not being fair, accusations of, well, you're the reason why nobody ever reports a Bigfoot sighting. No, that's not true. You know, so you have all these different things. So,
wow, and yeah, true objectivity is what you're talking about, which is music to my ears, bud. But
to me, I'm an investigator. So I take everything on a case-by-case basis. In the summation of things, I can say, you know, I'm very confident we have something going on in the United States and something that we call the Bigfoot.
Yeah, it's a colloquial name for it. Right. Yeah.
Bigfoot, Sasquatch, you know. But if I take everything case by case basis, and if we can get this case, which this kind of looks kind of shady, and we start digging and digging and digging and digging, and all of a sudden, boom, we get all these negatives, and we can put an end to it. To me, that's a job well done. It doesn't matter. Okay, I'm kind of bummed that it doesn't prove Bigfoot exists, or it doesn't, you know, further the cause, but I'm satisfied that we've solved the case. And that's, as an investigator, is what I want to do, is on a case by case basis, close the book.
Again, that's true objectivity. So,
right.
Yeah, more of that. I will advocate for always, which is a big part of why you're here tonight. So thank you so much. Like, dude, I appreciate that more than you know. You touched on some very important things, you know, that we've been discussing, and not just in the past week, but for a couple of months. Yeah, or even further. So yeah, we're not.
And I know
one
on a
pony here.
particular topic, you and I got kind of heated a little bit over something, but it was the after party.
Oh well, yeah, we've had disagreements.
Yeah, we've had disagreements, but I hope, and because you believe a certain way doesn't mean I don't like you. I just want you to open your eyes to the possibility.
Yeah, sure.
That's the thing. I want you to start thinking
Well,
a little differently.
Yeah, it definitely provoked thought,
and that's what I want. Even on my own stuff, if somebody came up and said something to me that was profoundly like changing on my investigations, I would say, okay, let me that gives me a chance to pause. Hey, wait, did we get this wrong? Because I've corrected myself many times in the past. I'm not perfect. I'm not 100% right all the time. Although I thought I was wrong once, but I was mistaken. But no. You gotta have that ability to be flexible sometimes.
I agree.
And at a couple of my, one particular thing, and it's the funniest thing that really frustrates the snaggle out of me, is on the New York baby. They call it the New York baby video, which is what I coined it at first. But
right.
I've kind of changed it back to the pigeon video, even though Doug is kind of missing in action right now. We don't know what happened to him. I'm trying to find him, but even as a private investigator, I haven't been able to find him. He was there for so long, and then all of a sudden he just fell off. But there was somebody trying to say, "Oh, that's an antenna on the back of the car." Well, wait a minute. There was no wind speed, so how can you explain all that motion from there to there?
Right.
And it's like, that is the most I've looked at this thing. Nobody has spent more time than me looking at it frame by frame. And I have the frame breakdown on my computer of every single frame. So that gets a little frustrating when people try to come up with these great ideas, which, at the beginning, if they came out in the beginning, I would have said, okay, let me take a look. But the fact is that I put hundreds of hours into this thing. And no, it's not an antenna. I know that, unless an antenna swings between trees.
Right.
And behind certain things.
Yeah, so you're a minutia guy, and those details matter. They just do.
Well, Dr. Meldrum said to me once, the devil is in the details.
Yep.
And every single case, for and against.
And with that, I'm going to bring the guys in.
Yay.
They've been waiting patiently.
God, I can blab all night.
Yeah.
There's Carrie there, Steve-O. How you doing, Steve?
There are too many Steves here. I'm going to go by CC.
Yeah.
What's up, CC? What's up, guys? Hey, Brent.
Hey,
Patrick.
Hey, good stuff, Steve.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
Well, we try.
Yeah. Well, you can tell you put a lot of time into it, and you have the experience to know what you're talking about and good ways to investigate the subject. And that's something that, is really, I think, needs to be discussed more and applied to the subject.
For too long. This has been going on too long.
Oh, far.
Letting things slide. Social media was a great avenue and a segue for people to put out, incorrect information or pseudoscience, or, we got people running around in the woods now looking for stick structures instead of prints and actual tracking like a trained tracker would. I'm not looking for stick structures.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for those tree breaks or something that big that had gone through something.
Mm-hmm.
But people are, there's an X over there. And then the next thing you know, they're off the track or off the trail. So
down a rabbit hole that takes them on the side road and who knows where that goes.
I've had that happen though. Guy with the camera's like, hey, why don't you just come over here? It's easier. But I'm on my hands and knees under the brush, tracking and filling the imprints in the terrain as I'm crawling up this 45-degree hill through brush and briars. And I'm like, but they went this way.
Yeah. So. Well, and part of it, I think, is laziness. People just want to go out there and be a Facebook star, a YouTube star. And instead, they're not looking at the tracking books that I got and reading that and finding minutiae. So if you see something, you take a picture of it. Don't say nothing about, well, I don't know what this is. Let me get my books out in case I don't. You gotta be objective. And, you know, if somebody wants to go out there and be that superstar, the objectivity is, oh, I got to put this on Facebook. You know, they're out there in the woods. Oh, here we are on Facebook Live. Look at these stick structures, because they're too quick to get on the Facebook, or they're too quick to get on YouTube.
Stick break. It must be Bigfoot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, tracking, you have to be humble and at the same time very confident in your skill set as well.
Yep.
Speak up, Patrick. Sorry.
I said, as a tracker, you have to be humble, but you also have to be confident, you know, in your skill set, because I'll get called out by a landowner. Hey, I want you to come track for me, and I'll track for anybody for free, but I got to know the person and trust them and what their mindset is, what their end game is, tracking for them. But because I'm not going to track something down for a pro kill,
I agree.
But I've been on my hands and knees. Crawling through the brush and like, why are you taking that way? I said, because this is where they're at. This is how they went. And if I get off of it in the dark, I might not find it 15 yards later.
Yep.
The other side of the brush. I want to stay on it.
I mean,
you play dog. I tell her. Go ahead.
Now, one of my most interesting calls I got, I talked to a guy for a couple of years who was just awestruck. He was in the middle Adirondacks, and he was a tracker. He said, now, I'm saying it's Bigfoot. I don't believe in Bigfoot, but I'm going to tell you something. Something came through here that I tracked it for like 3 miles, and then I lost it. I don't know how I lost it, but I lost it. He goes, but this thing was bigger than a moose. And that's the biggest thing we got in the woods here. Mm-hmm. Something is bigger than a moose, taller than a moose, and I tracked it. And I've been a field guide and a tracker for 30 some odd years, an older guy. He goes, I can't figure it out. So, I'm not saying it's Bigfoot, but and those are the kind of things that really strike me and make me feel confident, because then, like, okay, I believe this guy, because he's not saying it's Bigfoot, but he's not even sure he's a believer, but he knows something big went through there and wanted to give me the information. So,
yeah, that's interesting.
Although another side of that, from a different direction, from the social media standpoint, I'm not sure it's Bigfoot. What do you think?
Yeah.
What you
Question
think
mark.
Doesn't matter. What do the facts say? I love your investigation matrix. It really applies to really anything you want to look into. Metaphysical, parapsychology, everything. Yep. Follow those steps.
Yep. It's so crucial. And where people go wrong is they skip to the publication part. I sat on the Pridgeon film, aka the New York Baby video. I sat on that for 6 months, because I sat there and watched it and made phone calls and talked to witnesses and went back and re-interviewed the witnesses to answer any questions I had. I checked for, zoo escapes. I checked the laws. I checked, I talked to the property owner, done a whole bunch of things before I was, okay, I'm confident enough to put that out. Same thing with the New York Baby, the Vermont trail cam photo. The big contention there, people, well, it's an owl. Well, I think we're looking at pareidolia there. You think it's an owl because somebody said it's an owl. And unfortunately, Frank was saying, well, I took it to the biologist. He said it was an owl. So now you're thinking owl, and you look at it, it's an owl. But then you start looking at the fine detail. But what's that? And what's that? And what's that? And why is the shadow so close to it? Why isn't the shadow cast if this is something in front of the camera? So what I did was, okay, we did a bunch of tests on the camera. We took all the camera properties. We spun the weather. We do all that. Once we got the correct date and time, then we spun the weather for that time period. We looked at the other pictures on the SD card. And then we sent it to a Dr. Bruce Maccabee, who was an optics scientist for the National Defense Systems. Now, he does a lot of UFO stuff, but he also debunks a lot of UFO stuff too as being fake. when it comes to photographs. So I sent him, he came back with more questions. I sent him all the information about the camera. He even went to the camera manufacturer's website and looked at their engineer specs. And then he says, this is on the ground. He goes, there is just no way that this is something flying in front of the camera because you're leading edge shadow. It's called the parallax view. And Steve, if you're looking for that picture, is that what you're doing?
No, actually,
Okay.
I'm looking for something for another question coming up shortly.
Okay. So, in fact, I don't know. I'm going to pop this up for Pat a second, but you want to see, this is, I'm going to pop this up real quick. But Pat, if you want to share that screen real quick, I mean, this is what an investigation looks like. We were taking measurements. We were conducting all kinds of tests day and night. We took a comparison photo using the camera placement in the same area. We any objections that were raised, we covered them. Like somebody said, oh, maybe it's a guy in a ghillie suit. Well, it's not hunting season, so why would somebody be in a ghillie suit in the guy's front yard in rural Vermont? And then we have Bruce Maccabee's report, and we talk about some other questions to it too. But the other thing too is that the one thing that really didn't come out in this particular report was the fact that there had been a Bigfoot sighting not a tenth of a mile away from his residence a year earlier, as well as a sighting a year after the photograph was taken. There was a sighting a few miles away from in Hubbardton. So yeah, I mean, everything kind of lined up. So okay, Pat, you can kill that if you want. So everything lined up, and that's the kind of investigation you have to put forth. You know how many times I've kiboshed a sighting report when I looked at the weather data. Well, the weather data doesn't match at all what you were saying. You said it was sunny and bright, and that day it was cloudy and raining. Obviously, do you have to, and I don't even tell them that. I don't ever confront them with that. I normally say, hey, are you sure about the date? Oh, I'm actually positive. And then, if they have a picture or anything in the metadata, it matches up with the, if the picture doesn't match what the weather forecast is, you got a problem. And those are the evidentiary things you have to overcome, either by saying there was a mistake made on somebody's part, or there is objection to say, well, we can't use this. This is not evidence because of this reason.
Fair enough. Right?
No, I definitely agree. From what I caught there, it's if the evidence just doesn't pan out, then it's not valuable or valid for us to use to go forward. And if that's why it's really important, like you were saying, with the details. The details are extremely important. Every little aspect is so important because we have to ourselves have to vet this evidence out. We might not necessarily know the person, so we don't want to just take somebody's word for it, and we want to know for sure, and we have to go through this process, which is a general investigation process that isn't being mean to people. It's just trying to figure out what's going on with what's being presented. Is it valuable for us to use, or is it just a story that just stays in the story realm of this subject? And which is okay, I guess. If you're looking for stories in the subject, then that's the type of evidence you want. But for other people, kind of like us, we want to dig down deeper, get those details, and really figure it out and flush it out of what's real, what's not real, because we're trying to make that progress in this subject. And so it's great that you have all this experience that you're able to kind of help bring to the Bigfoot community and help teach us, good investigation skills. I know when I got into this subject, it was, I didn't have any real investigation skills. It's something that I didn't even think I needed, actually. I just thought I'd go in and go see what people are posting and stuff. I didn't realize that, if I wanted to know who's true or who's not true, I'm going to have to learn investigation skills. And so it's something that I had to develop over time. Sometimes it's the hard knock life, where you get burned, but you learn from that. And, as long as people understand, it's when you're trying to not be critical, but when you're trying to vet out information, figure out if it's real or not, that's not being mean at all. That's just part of the whole process of when you're presenting something to the public. So,
right.
And can I pause on that for a minute? Just for a couple of minutes, can we address that, Brent?
Sure.
If you don't mind, because I know you talk about this publicly, openly. It's no big deal.
And Pat, just so you know, there are a couple of comments I want to comment on too in the chat as well.
Okay. But real quick, if I could go over Brent's experience with getting into the Bigfoot world, are you familiar with the what would it be called, Brent? If it has a name, the tree, what?
The Bigfoot tree?
Yeah, the Bigfoot tree.
Oh, that was just one experience over many that I've had of, that was a direct experience that I had, one of many direct experiences that I've had, but it's also experiences of, coming across it in the Bigfoot community and the Facebook groups of these other YouTube channels and figuring out that there was kind of hokey stuff and, people ended up being not very truthful. So it's not just that tree specifically. That one there gave me the most enlightenment as far as what actually goes on in the Bigfoot community, what the process is, and how people can, get emotionally involved in evidence and people when, when in reality you probably shouldn't if you're looking for, the truth of what's going on in this subject. Okay.
Well, Steve, are you familiar with the Bigfoot tree at all?
I am not.
It's it's a tree that makes a weird knocking sound.
It's the Laurie Simmons tree.
Okay.
Laurie,
a little bit, and I've discussed this, especially in cold weather. And like I said, I don't know what the weather is here, but I kind of try to discount lone wood knocks sometime. Especially when it gets down like if you're in 10, 15, 20 degree weather and people are reporting wood knocking
and moisture,
those trees expanding and contracting in the cold make these
incredible
noises like a tree knock. I was like, I'm walking to my car and it's pitch black out and it's it's like 10 feet from me and I'm like, I know there's no Bigfoot right there. There isn't. And I live in the woods.
Right. Yeah, so, the Bigfoot tree is a little different as far as it's a very unique tree. Steve can vouch for that. He's been out there trying to help collect all the sounds that this tree makes, and is used for a long time and still currently used as Bigfoot evidence. And it's not Bigfoot evidence to some people because we see the facts behind it, but it's Bigfoot evidence to some people who want the story behind it, and they will fight for that story tooth and nail. And I think that's what we kind of encounter for the people who get labeled with that critical thinking, the people who want to find out more about this information that's being presented, which is really unfortunate because we're technically, we're all on the same team looking for the same stuff. We just have to realize that some of us are more dedicated into finding out what's going on than others are.
I don't like that word.
There is a couple of comments that I want to comment on.
All right. And plus, I got Thomas backstage. Can we do both at once? What do you?
Yeah. Bring good old Tom in.
All right.
There he is.
All right.
Thomas.
Hey, there he is.
Hello, Mr. Steenberg.
Hello, Mr. Kulls, the Squatch Detective. Great to see you again.
Great seeing you as well, sir.
As you notice, I've got the Star Trek technology now. I'm still getting used to it. Steve had me as a guest on his show, Squatch Detective, about a year or so ago before I had any of this, and he was trying to balance the other members he could see, but with me, he had me on his cell phone. He's trying to hold the cell phone up to the mic as he's talking.
Oh no!
It went off okay though.
It came off okay, and the topic was the ridiculous massacre theory.
Yes.
But after that show, it was my friends here who said we've got to get you into the 21st century. It took us so long to get you into the 20th century. Now we got to get you into the 21st century. So, Steve, thanks to you, I now have this stuff.
Awesome. So you know what that means? I got to get you back on the show relatively.
You do,
quick.
yeah.
Sure, anytime.
Get him on ASAP.
Yeah.
Yes.
The only thing, like Pat, I don't know is how to get on these things without the host sending me a link. I still don't know how to do that.
Well, that's fine. I'll send you the link.
Okay.
Hey, and to the people in the chat who are kind of new to the subject, Thomas is a really good investigator to kind of investigate, to kind of, see his journey into the whole Bigfoot phenomenon, how he investigates it. I think it's a really good way to go about it. And so just for those who might not be familiar with him, he's somebody that I highly recommend, like with Steve Kulls, highly recommend that you put more time into, learning about him, because he's got a lot of good information.
I will say this. When I started getting into this 22 years ago, Tom Steenberg was one of my heroes. So
yep. Still is, man. He still is. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're
Well,
happy.
I loved your list there you had earlier in the show there, Steve, your list of criteria. And I thought, well, that's a real fancy way of saying stick to the facts and never deviate from the facts.
Right.
I love it. And like that old saying goes, the devil's in the details.
Yep.
Before the show ends, I hope you put that back on the screen again. I'd like to write some of that down.
Certainly. Well, I can even give you a link to where you can find it.
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
So,
Absolutely. So, Steve, what did you want to address in comments?
So there was a couple of comments, and I think they were very valid comments. I guess Brandy from YouTube. So I think it's important to mention not everyone has the resources, capability, time to investigate a level like this. While respected, some seek answers through social media or help. And while I agree with that, the people that I'm talking about, necessarily the people that don't do this, that claim to do this. So it's not those people. Those people are trying to find answers. I understand that on social media, where people are just trying to find answers. That's why I think it's very imperative and important that, factual information get put out there, and that investigations get put out there that are well worked. Iron Dogger wrote that not everyone is on the same journey, and that should be respected. I agree, but don't put information out there like you're communing with them every week when you're not. So, and I respect people's journey. Some people just want to have an experience. Some people just want to learn the truth. Some people aren't invested in necessarily the investigation aspect. I get that. What I'm talking about is the people that claim to be invested in the investigation and saying, hey, I have this great evidence. Well, if you have great evidence and you're putting it out there, what happened 20 years ago was they used to come to somebody like a Tom Steenberg to say, hey, Tom, what do you think of this? And then Tom would take it from there. That's what happened with the Vermont trail cam photo. That's what happened with the New York baby video. That stuff got sent to somebody that could do the investigation, not just put it out there, say, look, I got Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And that's what's going on.
Well, and I've said this before on the show, people used to send poop in the mail to check out. So, like, hey, analyze this. And he gets a hot, steamy bag of poop in the mail at his university, by the way.
Well,
Yeah,
at least
better than home.
but I do want to say thank you, Brandy and Iron, for those comments. They are very relevant, and there is a delineation. So don't think that I think everybody that believes this or that is in the bad bin. It's because they're getting their information from sources that should
Well, there
know
you
better.
go.
Yeah.
Thank you for addressing that, Steve. Brandy says.
Another hard thing to do, though, in social media, if you're new to this, and this is something that Leon's been studying a lot, is it's hard to find the people who are actually being serious, and hard to find and easy to find a lot of people who just want to read stories or be entertaining or even make stuff up.
Well, in other words, a lot of
that's
people.
Something that we need to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's something that I think that we need to, understand more going forward, is that, like I mentioned before, not all of us are, after the stories. We want to kind of get to the facts of it, and it's just, it's just like I say, it's just part of the process.
Yeah, and we have to face the absolute reality that so many in the so-called Sasquatch community are basically more like religious leaders trying to push a faith than investigators trying to find an answer to a mystery. And that's just the way it is. There are a lot of people let's face it, there's a lot of strange people out there, and inmates running the asylum, and they're not really interested whether the Sasquatch exists or not. The whole thing just fills some void in their lives, and they love the merry-go-round that never ends, and it just fills some emptiness in there, and with them, and they really don't care if there's actually a living, breathing primate of flesh and blood out there in the woods of North America or not. They just love being Mulder and Scully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is okay. But when it starts to get in the way of, true investigation of really trying to find out what's going on, it kind of, that's where there's a big issue that I see with, as far as where the drama starts to happen, and it's just really unfortunate that hopefully people will understand going forward that people who do ask those questions aren't necessarily bad people. They just really want to know what's truly going on, and if you're presenting something to the public,
that's what we're basically doing it for, is the people who really want to know. And the people who don't, well, they just turn to you there and say, hey, you need to do some real research, or you're just jealous, or, that kind of nonsense. And so just tune that out and carry on, boys.
That's all you can do, is as long as you're confident in what you're doing, which I feel, critically thinking about this subject is definitely a good way to go for me personally, because I'm out there looking for the truth. I really want to help move it forward. And, it's discussions like this, and thank you, Pat, for having this discussion, and continued discussion of really, a different way of looking at it, different ways of investigating, a good understanding that we need to investigate, all of us that are on this Bigfoot journey. We're all on our own investigation. So we all kind of need to learn these skills, which Steve Kulls posted up a little earlier in that screenshot there, and which is a perfect way to go about it.
Yeah.
Nikki has a question for me. I think we should, if you want to pop that up.
We'll do that, and then we're gonna start adding more people.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to bounce out here.
And I know Brent's got to go soon. So,
but it says, don't you believe if you have video or pic that need any kind of circle arrows or even pick enhance really shouldn't be shared? Do you do a full investigation on a shitty pick? It depends. Question number one is always, did you see it? If somebody takes a picture of a blob squatch, but they had an encounter and they saw it, obviously I want to research it, and that I will share. Hey, listen, they saw this. Here's what they took. It's not evidence. It just really doesn't prove anything, but they did get a photo of what they physically saw. If somebody's just taking the
whole investigation,
right? Yeah, you do the whole investigation. If somebody's just taking willy-nilly pics and say, "Oh, look, I got a Bigfoot here and here and here," that's the kind of stuff that shouldn't be shared. I think there's a difference when you actually have a witness behind the camera that's seeing it and is trying to take some sort of picture.
Fair enough.
There's an essay that I'm working on that'll be coming up hopefully within the next few weeks that talks about evidence and what evidence is. This is something that Patrick Vaughn has asked me about a couple of times, and I think it's worth getting out there. And evidence isn't just found. Evidence is something that emerges from the investigation of the pictures and the samples and all of the traces around a sighting. Evidence is produced by investigation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that rings true to Steve, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead, bro.
Yeah. So again, it was good talking to you guys all tonight. And Pat, again, great job on the show. Steve, awesome. Steve, awesome. Patrick, awesome. Thomas, awesome. It was great talking to you guys. I'm going to go out. It's a date night tonight. Got to keep that good balance in life.
Absolutely.
And so I'm going to kind of keep listening as much as long as I can. So keep up the good work, guys. And it was a pleasure talking to you all tonight.
All right. We'll see you, Brent.
Right.
Brent.
Have a good one, Matt.
And with that, I'll fill his void like this.
And it's Leon.
Leon of Sasquatch, Okanagan.
You bet it is. Slash Bigfoot for the American friends.
And he's not wearing a hat tonight.
I know. Well, I noticed that. I wanted to balance it out a bit. See, the two guys in the middle have hats.
Where's the horse?
And this way we get to do this.
Oh yeah, hang on.
Exactly. Except for Pat.
See,
Good
Pat
to see you,
doesn't
Leon.
do that nearly enough. He's still got something up here.
Yeah.
For now.
Thank God.
Yeah. I wish.
Pat, do you have kids?
It worked out well that you had such a
Do you
lot
have
of
kids,
people.
Pat?
No, I don't.
That's why you have hair.
Yep. Exactly.
Haven't had hair like that since the 70s. There.
I have two chihuahuas. Wait, hey, Leon, welcome to the show.
Yeah.
How did you hack your way into my show, dude?
Technology. Yeah, that's what it is. Actually, it's a portal. It's a portal laptop. Actually, it works really quite unique, as you can tell. So you might want to investigate how to
He's
do
got a
this.
self-portrait out on the shelf over there.
Yeah.
I can do this.
Leon, where'd you get
I'm
that
also gonna
portal
bring in
laptop
mystery
at? Because
guest,
I need
dude.
one.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Patrick.
Patrick, I hear you trying to talk, but you seem to be breaking up a little bit and jumpy a little bit.
Yeah, your mic's really low too, buddy.
I can hear Tom.
Oh, I can hear you now. What were you just saying? I couldn't hear you.
Oh, he is choppy.
I was asking Leon.
there we
Ooh, okay, we're losing him.
We either get picture or voice, but not both.
I don't think Patrick Vaughn is real.
Yeah.
I have questions.
Patrick's got to pull the string tighter.
G.I. Joe, the original one.
BRB guys, I'm gonna work on bringing in the mystery guest.
Oh,
Oh, the
okay.
mystery. It's Todd Standing. No.
I would love it if it was Todd Stead.
Me too.
He's got a new one coming out. Eh?
It's not
got a-
outstanding.
He's got a new one coming out. Some kind of new video we're all be impressed with. So it
Oh
should be
yes,
another
here we go
15
again.
seconds.
Yeah, I saw some stills of him barefoot climbing a cliff in front of a waterfall. And first of all, I want to know is why would anyone want to climb a cliff barefoot in front of a waterfall? But okay. I guess he just wants to prove he's Superman again, ex-JTF2 or whatever he claims to be now. Yep.
Well, and then Justin just posted that what was it? That conference where the guy was, what's his name? He's from Russia, I think.
Burst out.
Yeah, about let's call up a Sasquatch right now and bring him on the panel. Why don't we put him online so we can actually see him talking on the phone? How about we do that idea? You know,
I didn't have the bandwidth for that.
What happened to Pat's mystery guest?
Oh, he's coming. Oh my goodness, you got a cough there, smoker man.
Oh, look who's talking, Leon. You're just
But
good at hiding that cough.
I saved that for the morning.
Yeah.
That's why you boys need to switch to a pipe. You know, it's very cheap.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, actually, I got a chance to watch the show earlier before I got on here. I got called out for a crisis call, so that's why it was late. But yeah, it was just really, man, it's refreshing to hear this kind of talk. I'll tell you, especially in a group like this. So, but
He's back.
Well, there are some bad words out there, but they're only bad words to people who can't stand up for them. Things like debunking. Debunking is not a bad word. It's just trying to see if the evidence that emerges from an investigation stands on its own.
Yep. 100%.
And you know, we are dealing with Bigfoot, so there's going to be times we can't get a straight answer, and that may be an honest thing. And like I said, tenet number one that I have in my list is keep an open mind. You know, but number two is remain objective. Keeping an open mind doesn't mean throwing away the science book.
Yeah.
And those are the first two those are the first two mission statements I have.
Yep.
You know, and three is obviously always tell the truth. You know, if something doesn't if something isn't a Bigfoot, if it turns out it's not pro Bigfoot, okay, big deal.
Yep.
We move on.
Well, Bill Reed in the comment section said it very well just a little while ago. He said it goes beyond that. Some people may legitimately believe they have evidence and they feel they are being called a liar. Many people just don't understand the scientific process.
Right. Well,
okay, that was a different one than Pat brought up, which really one of the things, and this is another one I'll be talking about at some point. Science doesn't actually need an explanation. Science is an effort to, for example, to take phenomena that are observed, make predictions about their behavior, and use those predictions to produce better results as you progress your investigation. You don't necessarily know how a thing works, but you want to observe how it behaves. The Montgolfier brothers made hot air balloons, but they didn't know how they worked. They still knew how to fly them.
Yeah.
I see Patrick took time out to feed the squirrels because his signal looks a lot better.
And I would say this about science. I'll bullet it down even more, even though the point you just made, Steve, was very, very good point. Science is really nothing more than our understanding of the world. So, I mean, science happens. We all do science every day to try and understand the world better.
Well, let me ask the panel a question, and this is going to be a very blanket statement.
All right, but then I need to bring the mystery guest in.
When we do investigations, do we use the scientific method? We don't, because we're not scientists. We are investigators, and I've always said this. I can't. If I use the scientific method, who cares? I'm not a scientist. It doesn't mean anything. Right. But if I gather the information, like an investigator hands stuff off to a prosecutor, my job is to collect the evidence to hand off to the scientist and let them process the scientific method. That's
I agree with that generally.
I don't want to overstep my bounds and try to say, well, we use the scientific method, and then people, you're not a scientist.
Yeah.
So.
And let them ask you what evidence they need to help you collect the kind of evidence that they need.
Yep.
All right, without further ado, mystery guest tonight, this guy, Chad will be happy.
What's up, guys?
Hey, what's up?
Patrick, how are you?
Doing well.
What's up, dudes?
So,
are you wondering why you're asked on the show tonight?
A little bit. Very distinguished panel. I'm honored to be here.
From Central Florida, Bigfoot. He sent me your video from last night's show.
Oh,
that was a great contrast between two different viewpoints on your show there.
Yeah,
Flat Earth Sasquatch. I never heard there was such a thing as a Flat Earth Sasquatch guy, but apparently there is out there.
Oh yeah, there is. Those two worlds, those two communities have a crossover point, no doubt. I mean, I've noticed that for a long time now.
It caught me off guard.
Okay.
It definitely caught me off guard last night, and having Iron Doggers step in was the saving grace.
Brilliant is what it was.
Yes.
I saw her in chat, and she wanted to come in, and for her to want to come on, she had something to say. So I was like, "Bring it, please."
Yeah, I kind of could tell that was her first time ever confronting a flat earther, like live on air, at least.
Oh no! Well, maybe that way, yeah.
Yeah,
but she's not. She's familiar with the subject.
Yeah, it's they're actually very clever. They know how to. They're really good at giving you 20 fires to put out at once. So once you learn their sort of tactics of doing that, you can like take them on differently. I've been on flat Earth debates. I've watched a lot of flat Earth debates.
So you're saying they're skilled arsonists of the truth?
Basically, I mean, boy, you can't distort the reality and truth more than taking a fucking globe and making it a flat plane. I mean, that's that's 180 degrees in the different direction of reality. But they do it, and they're actually quite clever, not to be underestimated.
Yeah, that was my first time having to deal with that subject at all. I do have a moderator who's been waiting for that to happen, but she wasn't there last night because I know she would have jumped on and been on that subject like white on rice.
Yeah, but you notice, bro, he never gave up. I mean,
no.
To the very end, he's like, "Hey, I'll let you guys go, but it's all about what you have in your heart and the whole spiel." And then he left the show. I mean, he never let go, and they never will. Those guys will never let go.
You know what's funny though is I had the opportunity. Like I saw in chat where people were starting to get a little, I don't know, annoyed, but they were ready to leave, and I don't know if anybody did. Maybe a few, but it was sort of like a train wreck. You couldn't look away,
It always is, yeah.
It was sort of a morbid curiosity of what the hell this guy was going to say next. Yeah. And it was great though.
Hey,
I love the way it turned out.
In third grade, I lost my wiffle ball. Now I know where it went. Went off the earth. Right off the side.
Right.
Yeah, it's like the phrase, if the earth was actually flat, everything would be knocked off by our cats off the side.
Yeah.
That's where all the missing socks went.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's a hilarious meme.
What I thought was funny when I was watching your video was how you realized what you had on the show and how you were trying to negotiate what to do with what you had.
Right.
Well, how could I not let him just go? I mean,
yeah,
that was priceless. I had to just go, have at it.
Well, we're getting off the topic here, but I got to ask you, I didn't see the show. I assumed it was about the flat earth theory.
No,
it just came up.
It was a little bit of everything came up.
I was just wondering how they explain the photographs of the Earth taken from the Apollo missions. Was the disc turned on its side?
Thomas,
that's easy. They're just fake.
Oh,
yeah.
He had a whole thing with NASA where
they have an answer for everything.
NASA.
I'm always disappointed when I get on top of a mountain and I can't see the Eiffel Tower because I've always wanted to see it.
Good point. And
I have to admit, I was particularly entertained by the Walt Disney Company working with the Nazi SS.
Yes. To destroy the wall, the ice wall on the flat Earth, yeah. So that is what it is. That's way out there, crazy town. But I don't know, man. Like, what do you think of the discussion that's happened so far tonight?
Pat, show the picture. Show the picture, Pat.
The picture of what? Wait, hold on. Okay. Oh, yeah.
One of these things like the others.
Oh, that's awesome.
There you go.
I still want to know why I can't see the Eiffel Tower.
Because of the atmosphere.
I'm enjoying tonight's discussion.
Well, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I wanted you to be a part of tonight's discussion. Just like sort of on the fly. I watched that video, from last night, and I'm like, oh, you're an interesting guy, man. You're wearing an AC/DC t-shirt. Like, you kind of talk like me, like, hey, man, I want to get this guy on my show, and Leon recommended you, so. You're a you're a Bigfoot guy. You do that stuff. So I don't know, man. What are your thoughts?
I just got into the Bigfoot stuff. My experiences are paranormal.
Okay.
But I figured, I started listening to Sasquatch Chronicles and I got hooked. So I figured if I believe in the paranormal and I know that exists, why I should give flesh and blood a chance, So, and just, listen to all those stories. I was like, no, all these people can't be lying. And if one person is telling the truth, it exists.
You got something. Yeah.
So yeah. And then I I started to do some research, just a little bit, back in Arizona. I'm in Florida now. I just did the expedition with Carrie Arnold about 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, whatever it's been. And that was a great experience. I learned a lot about myself, and I really enjoyed the whole process. And I was up there yesterday. I went up to that property that we did the expedition on, because I'm trying to. There was some lights that were seen up there, and I think I have it figured out. So I'm going up there to try to debunk it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I have to go back up. It's about 2.5 hours away from here. But yeah, I have to go back up again, and my tripod wasn't tall enough. It sounds like an excuse, but I couldn't get above the weeds to film what I wanted to film. So I did the best I could, but there were a lot of pigs around. So we didn't stick around too late because the pigs were getting active.
Right. Okay. So I guess you have a sort of a theory in your head that those lights are in a fixed position. And
no, they're moving, but they're on a road. I think they're headlights.
Oh, okay. All right. Gotcha. Well, that's interesting. So you're investigating.
Absolutely.
Which has sort of been the theme of tonight's show.
Yeah.
I'd love to help you debunk that if you can give me some map coordinates sometime.
I'm not at liberty to give those out. This is an active search area that, Bigfoot Odyssey is using, and other, it's not my information to give out.
Very well.
Just for respect for these other researchers.
Yeah, that's understandable. I definitely know what you mean.
But yeah, thank you though.
The lights people see in the woods are one of the interests I have to look into. And all of the Bigfoot areas that I've been looking at around here, they don't have the lights. They have the trees falling down in the night, sticks breaking, things like that, but no lights.
Patrick?
Well, if you have lights like what when you were live, I watched your live show, Moggs, loved it. And you were talking about the lights out there. If it is cars way out there past the forest, you'll see it. Behind stuff, there should be something on video.
But the way it's laid out, when you look at it from a satellite view, the direction that we're looking in, and there's trees, and it opens up, and then in a direct straight line about 5 miles away, you hit a road, but you're going straight down the road. You're not looking at it from the side. You're looking like head on. So you're going to see something coming at you for an extended period of time. It's not, you're not watching it go by. You're seeing it come at you.
Okay. That angle. Yeah.
Yes. So that's why I feel strongly about this.
Yeah.
So the earth is flat for at least 5 miles. Then.
At least, maybe 5.5.
It's flat.
And then it doesn't even dip down. It goes to the left.
Maybe actually it's a square earth.
Oh,
maybe it's not flat. Maybe it's a square. We're a big cube.
Are they always white lights, or do they sometimes see red tail like lights?
See, that's the thing. I thought about that too. But they claim that there were. I mean, I've seen the lights. I saw them last night, but filming them, I couldn't get a steady picture because I wanted to shoot from the tripod, not touching the camera. Because everything was too shaky. So I completely forgot the question.
we were just talking about the situation.
Well, are the lights sometimes white, sometimes yellow,
colors,
sometimes
yes.
red?
Yeah, red.
I have a question.
They do change. They twinkle blue and red, but I think it's majority of it's a white.
Moggs, I have a quick question for you.
Shoot.
How's the cell phone reception in the area?
Actually, it's good.
Okay. So if there's somebody you can team up with, put them up on that road.
Oh, I plan to.
Yeah. Okay.
There were only two of us there yesterday.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's in the making. I have this whole thing planned out,
and just do it a
it's
few
just
times.
getting
Yeah.
it's logistics and getting.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Oh, I'm gonna cough.
Oh my God, that would be experimental evidence.
No, experimental evidence is when I try a new whiskey.
Well, I'm experimenting right now. So from 5 miles, just to like CC, the taillights they would not be as prominent as headlights. Headlights are way brighter. From 5 miles, you would have a hard time, even in darkness, picking up taillights. But headlights, you could definitely see from 5 miles. But you would definitely be in a slightly elevated position because of the curvature of the earth.
Well,
But
it depends
not
on
much,
how dark
not
and how
much
clear.
elevation.
Also,
Yeah.
remember, Pat, at that distance, 2 headlights merge together and appear as one light.
Exactly.
It would, yes, I agree. Yeah. Mhm.
Well, are you doing this at night as you as you witnessed it before, or are you going to have someone go to that road with a spotlight and shine back to you and try?
No,
to
we're
see?
gonna. I need somebody to go and drive that road. It's a heavily traveled road, but I need them to go like that, maybe 6 miles down the road, turn around, come back, and we'll film it, but flash your lights or make yourself known and film it that way. I just really I feel so strongly about this. That's why I'm actually pursuing this and I'm getting out and doing this. Because I want to. I believe I'm right.
Make sure your buddy has a cell phone or a walkie-talkie to talk to you with at the same time, so you.
Oh yeah, no,
you know where he is when he turns around. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a matter of getting. I want to get on the other side of this. It's a tree line or a hammock of trees. But when I was there yesterday, it was so overgrown. It was almost impossible to get to. And then if I did get through it, I wouldn't have been able to see anything from the other side because it was so overgrown. So next time.
I have a question for you too. Is how did you meet up with Iron Dodger? That's
Iron Dogger?
Yeah.
Iron Dogger has been. I've known her from chat, in different channels, and I became friends with her and some other people that were closer to her, and I learned a lot about her, and I was very impressed with her, and I really wanted her to come on and tell her story. And she promised me she would come on. I'd be her first interview, and sure enough, she came through. It was last night. She saw her opportunity to make good on a promise because this coming up Friday, she's going to be on Bigfoot Odyssey. So she had to slip me in there beforehand. But yeah, no, it was, and I'm thrilled that she came on and everybody got a chance to meet her. And because people got to see a different side. If they watch her videos, she's nuts in a wacky, fantastic way.
Yeah.
But given what she's going through, and everything, be as wacky as you want to be.
Yeah, and is she still living in Alaska, or is she?
She still lives in Alaska. Right now, she's in Oregon.
Right. And does she do? She was talking about that she doesn't do triathlons. Does she do skidoo? Oh, I can't remember what.
A snow machine or a
race of 2,000 kilometers or 1,000 kilometers.
Yeah.
The Iditarod?
It's not the Iditarod. It's a snow machine race, not a dog sled race.
That's right.
So hence the name Iron Dogger.
Yeah. And then she came across those tracks. That's what it was really neat too. Is she has a very interesting story for sure. Like
we didn't hear anything. I know she has a lot more to tell.
Here she is. She's in chat.
Yeah, I see her.
Yeah.
Because I have much love for you, Mugs. Aw. Right on. Thank you, Iron Dogger. Really, and you know what? Doing this the people that I've met, everybody here, when I'm in chat, I kind of play a Russian roulette by I just put my link in chat. Anybody wants to come on, click the link. But
I like that. I like that.
Oh yeah, no, that's what I do. And it's not really a Russian roulette because I trust everybody in my chat. And what's the worst that can happen? Some asshole comes on, you're gone.
You kick him out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could have removed the gentleman last night, but why would I do that?
So did he choose to leave, or how did that all work there?
He chose to leave. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I kind of clicked him off a little quick. I didn't mean to be rude, but yeah.
Yeah. He had such a toss salad approach of concepts and ideas from every spectrum he possibly could have been.
By the way, he's also in chat right now.
Well, that's good. That's good. People need to be, we have to discuss. So,
if you're interested,
it turned out well. Go ahead.
If you're interested, I do have a real life situation of the sort of thing Mogollon Monster is talking about that we could actually show people on a map.
Oh, with lights?
Yeah. I go to a what's called a star party, but amateur astronomers go out and show off their telescopes at a place called Table Mountain in Washington. And people are seeing UFOs there all the time, directly south. And sometimes they're white and going down, and sometimes they're red and going up. And if you find Table Mountain on Google Maps and then zoom out and go directly south, there is Interstate Highway 97 going up a steep hill south of the town Ellensburg, and that's what people are seeing. But in the dark, it's hard to tell where the sky ends and the ground begins.
That's true. The horizon gets lost. Yeah.
Hey, you guys, I have to check out. I just got another call that's just coming. I got to address. So I'll call back on if this isn't too long. So
no, man.
Glad you guys all made it.
Take care, Leon.
Take care, Leon.
I got a question for Steve if we're done talking about lights and stuff.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, Steve, using the criteria you investigate by, hypothetical situation here. It is October 22nd, 1967. If you had the late Roger Patterson in front of you, what sort of questions would you ask him, and how would you begin your investigation into his claim he just filmed a Sasquatch in Bluff Creek in Northern California?
Well, that's a very complicated situation. Well, obviously, there would be people I would have to talk to. Roger, of course, Bob, getting all their information. Mm-hmm. So apart from one another, Al Hodgson, of course, who was at the store, because they're secondary witnesses. Aldo Atley.
Oh, yeah, that would have been fun.
Yeah, and getting the timeline worked out.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you go? What was point A? What was point B? What time did this happen? What time did that happen? Yeah. So you shot you took you took the film of the creature, and then Bob went up the hill and tried to track it for a little bit. Then you called him back, and then so you had to collect Roger's horse, and you had to collect the pack horse. Then you had to go back to camp, and then you had to pack the horses, or did you leave the horses at the camp? Because that's one of the things I have. They did all this driving, which would have took hours. Did they leave the horses at the camp, or did they take them with them? Because it seemed kind of strange if they left the horses alone for an extended period of time in the camp. Do all that. Okay, so what did you do next? Okay, so I know it gets a little confusing. In some versions, I've heard both, that they went to the airport first, or they went to Al Hodgins first. You know, apparently the initial story was they went to Al Hodgins. Roger made a bunch of phone calls, and then they went to the airport, unsure of which airport it was.
But I know this, but it's gone out of my head.
Yeah, I think I wrote it down somewhere the last time you did mention it. Okay, so at that point, what did you do? Well, you went back to Hodgson's to get boxes to cover up.
Murphy's Field, that's what it was called.
That's right. Yeah. You went back to, so, you would have to, quiz all that and time all that. And then, a lot of people think that, they want to separate, film from the story. Mm-hmm. Well, without a good story, without a solid story that makes sense, the film, that weighs the film. No matter how good a film looks, the story, basically is going to tell you how that film is.
What questions would you have asked them about this?
Well, with speed. What speed?
Yeah, I know, right?
I wish someone had asked them that back then. What speed did he have?
What speed? That's question number one. And question number two is, why didn't you return it? But then, so what speed is probably the most important question when it comes to the technical aspect of the film itself. Mm-hmm. Because that would determine whether or not it's what speed it was actually traveling at.
Well, one of the problems with that back then is if you look at the dial in this thing, there's 14 frames per second, 25 frames per second, 64 frames per second, and 64 frames per second. Now, it's a known fact. This camera was actually discontinued in 64, but there was still a lot of them available. And a lot of them, the inner workings were remodulated to film at 18 frames per second, but they didn't change the dials. They left the old dials on. Yeah. They just changed because 18 frames per second was better for outdoor photography in those days.
And I think it's fairly conclusive that it was 18 frames per second.
Now, was the lens on the camera, was that interchangeable, or is that?
Yeah, you can change, and the fixed lens you can change, but it unscrews, and you got to screw another one in. Later on, they came out with these like movable, like adjustable lenses, but that's not what Roger had. He had the older fixed lens.
And the audience is thinking, because Bill Reed out there added the question, and what lens did it have? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very pertinent question as well. Good job, Bill. I like that. Yeah.
And he jumped on that right away.
Yep.
Well, not only that, but exposure and focus.
Yeah.
Yeah, Roger basically knew how to load it, and how to aim it, and how to shoot the trigger, and that's about it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, man. Like, what do you guys think of the PG film, Patrick?
Well, I think it speaks for itself. I mean, even without the story, I think everybody pretty much knows a version of the story. I think it's legit. To me, it's never been disproven. It's never been debunked. I think it's a pretty solid piece of evidence.
My opinion, if the Sasquatch does indeed exist, I think Roger and Bob filmed on October 20, 1967, because I can't get the intermembrane index out of my head.
Fair enough.
And the footprints that it left behind that day. I mean, there were such variance in the tracks as Patty sped off, and there was such difference in them from the two that Roger originally cast. I have them here, but I got them put away right now. And what was known as the Laverty track was one of the best examples of a mid-tarsal break I've ever seen. But you compare that to the one that was near the water that Roger actually cast, it was rather flat-footed. And yet they were both about approximately 14 1/2 inches long. but there was such variance in them. One was flat-foot and one had a mid-tarsal break. If you look at the line of tracks of the second roll of film, there was huge indication of toe movement and everything else. And I wish to hell that Titmus had cast one of those when he was casting 10 9 days later. So,
well, personally, it was just a wives' tale and a myth till I was 31 years old. You know, I saw the film, and it was just all hogwash. But then at 31, after having an encounter, and I start looking at it, the more I looked at it, and then it was broke down, and you could see the muscle tissue moving and flexing as it moved. You could see the facial structures change as it walked and looked back and then turned back forward. And after really looking at it, I believe that is a real being on film, and it has not been debunked. They never can debunk it. Matter of fact, there was a primatologist, doctor, who actually debated our fearless leader Pat, that said this is a strange film. You know,
she did. She admitted that, but then reserved judgment past that to say it's not enough to convince me of a undiscovered upright walking hominid in North America. And I said, fair enough.
Yeah.
I was just happy that he found it strange and made her more curious, rather than what people in the Bigfoot world are used to, which is this, nothing. No, it's misidentification of bears.
Well, it was pointed out. It was pointed out that the way it moved, was a hang-up back then, because they did not predict that Patty should have those types of traits and characteristics in her bone structure. But now, after all the review and some new findings, she is exactly what she should be. In about 6 different ways scientifically in that film.
Yeah, there are Bigfoot similar type creatures in the fossil record currently. So, yeah.
But Steve, in your sequence of investigation, after you originally interviewed, if you had the opportunity to interview Roger Patterson, at what point would you have gone to the film site?
I probably would have been there the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's crucial. When you if you have somebody that has an encounter, and you want to get the steps, like the getting to the film site happens the same time I interview the witness. That should happen pretty quick, because you want to collect that forensic evidence if it's there.
Mm-hmm.
The first step, when you're analyzing the IP address, you're looking at the validity of the story, the way they wrote it. And then you talk to them on the phone. By that time, you should have a fair assumption of what it happened or it didn't happen. And if you're unsure, you go. You err on the side of caution. You go to the site. And I always predicate that to my witnesses, that, listen, I'm going to come up, visit you, but I'm doing that at my own cost.
Mm-hmm.
And my own, I don't get paid to do this, so it costs me money to do this. I take time off from work. So if there's any chance that this is not what you think it is or not what you're saying it is, please let me know now. That way. And you kind of get on their last little, and usually they'll hedge at it. Sometimes, there was a video that came out called the Interstate Wisconsin video. And I emailed the person who submitted the video, and of course it was one of those 5-second videos. And finally I just hit him between the eyes. I said, listen, this isn't real, is it? Because he was just coming up with nonsensical explanations. It was just, can you tell me more about it? Oh, it was just amazing. Well, that's not what I asked you. I said, really, what was it like? Well, it was just me and my brother out there, and I couldn't believe it. All right, listen, this isn't real, is it? And he says, no, it's not. So sometimes you hit them between the eyes with it, and sometimes they'll just come out and tell you. And you can always, in all of them, you have to get that feel. And it's a very intuitive thing when you talk to somebody, when you get, and of course I've talked to a lot of people that have tried to pass off things, in the criminal world, that I have a really good, gut feeling as to when somebody is. Now, as far as Pat's question about the Patterson film, I'm kind of, I was very pro, but the more I investigate, the more questions I'm getting, and I'm starting to get into some deep stuff, and to the point where, I think, and it's kind of funny. This goes back to our conversation we had a year ago, Tom. Was I think we have. I think I may have come up with some of the same questions that MK Davis may have had, but I'm not forlorn to great conspiracy theories, nor am I, saying, oh, there's some red in the film, so it's got to be this. But I can understand why he had some confusion as to the storyline of it. But I have a completely different hypothesis. But it's going to take a little bit, really, for me to formulate more of it.
Just to clarify, it doesn't involve bodies and
no, not at all. Matter of fact, it's kind of funny because I just ordered this book, all 500 and some odd pages, when Roger met Patty. So I'm going to delve into the more technical aspects of the film. Because on the face value of it, the film looks pretty damn good. But the story to me, and the story how it was told on October 26th to, I believe, trying to think who interviewed him. But Todd Prescott's been putting a lot of stuff on there. And there was an interview on October 26th, 1967, that was done with both Roger and Bob.
Oh, yeah, he was a British Columbia Canadian interviewer. His name's got on my head. He was very popular up here in the 60s and 70s as a radio host.
He kind of had like a Scottish accent almost.
Yes. Bill Reed remembers the name. Bill, type it out in the comments there. It's gone out of my head. I know him. I just can't remember his name just offhand. Jack Webster. Thank you. Thank you. Jack Webster. Yeah.
So, what was said on that interview has changed a bit over the years. And that of course, being an investigator and being that person makes me pause. And I know, Pat and I had a discussion about this kind of stuff before, that people want to separate one thing from the other, the actual film from the story. But as an investigator, especially, doing what I've done in my lifetime, I know they're both one and the same. They have to be lockstep, because if they're not lockstep, then there's something wrong. I'm not saying there's something wrong here. I'm saying that there's needs to be clarification and answers on one side.
Patrick?
I have a question of, and you have a great way of investigating, but how is it applicable to actually going into the field and finding these things?
Because there's two levels of investigation. Is a different number of sciences. When you're in the interview phase, you're in the witness and direct evidence. Witness information is direct evidence. So you're in that direct evidence collection. When you're in the field, that's more of the forensic side of things, or the scientific side of things, where you're trying to either, one, get something to repeat itself, or you're trying to collect actual physical evidence. So they're two separate sciences. For example, it's very different than getting a person in an interrogation or interview room versus somebody going out to the actual crime scene and collecting the blood DNA. They're two separate functions. And what they do is that when you're done collecting all of that, then they basically make up your playbook. Okay, here's the story you're told. Does the story you're told match the evidence you've collected? Mm-hmm. And that's how that goes together.
Always remember, Patrick, there's a difference between investigating a particular incident and investigating the subject in general on your own.
Right.
Well, there is, but there isn't. Okay, because the particular subject can cause an incident that you're investigating. But Well, I'm trying to add tools to my toolbox when I go into the woods. How can I be more strategic? How can I think more strategic as an investigator instead of just a tracker
Okay,
or a
so
naturalist?
I'm going to give you a little thing I learned along. Like I said, my big thing in this was psychology. Not only the psychology of the witnesses and forensic interviewing of the witnesses, but what I ended up doing was, why does a Bigfoot do what it does? Does it walk off in some cases? In other cases, it acts very aggressively, or in some cases, it's kind of a mixed bag. Well, what I found out is that the more aggressive ones seem to be clustered than the non-aggressive actions. So what I've done is one of the big takeaways when I talk to a witness that I feel is legitimate, what kind of behavior is it exhibited? Is it escorting the person out? Is it screaming at them? Is it throwing rocks at them aggressively versus passively? Or and what it all came down to is the way primates live and behave. Thank you, Patrick. And that exactly, there's a book I wrote, What Would Sasquatch Do? And it was based on basically primate behavior. And when I look at a sighting or an encounter, I don't necessarily look at it in the way we look at. See, I felt that we classify Bigfoot sightings like UFOs almost. Because UFOs, you have close encounter of the first kind, second kind, third kind. Well, we have this class A, Bigfoot sighting, which means you saw it. Class B is this. Whereas I found it was more important where you may not directly see it for very long, but you have this audible encounter and then you're escorted out. Those kind of actions to me are more important because primates, and what I did was I studied how primates live in their behaviors within these certain groups or these certain habitats. And it turns out that primates, including us, have 3 or 4 different zones. And one zone is our territory. One zone is our home range. And our other zones are our foci areas. Now, territory is very simply, in our speak, is our homes, right? Our property or whatever. Home range is where we may travel to and fro each day. And foci areas are areas where we conduct certain activities like malls, shopping centers, and schools. Now, what I found is, in all primates, that home ranging, when you're in your home range, just walking down the street, going from point A to point B, you run into something or somebody, your general reaction is kind of a walk-off. You don't really acknowledge much, or you may acknowledge very briefly, and then you just carry on your way. Next, we have the more concise action is your territory. Well, if a stranger walks into your home or a strange animal walks into your home, what's your actions going to be? It's going to be very aggressive. You're going to want to get that thing out of there. Now, you may not, for example, a strange dog walks in your home, you're not going to kill it. You're going to shoo it out, right? A bat, a lot of people don't kill bats. They try to capture them and get them out of the house. That's a primate thing because primates of one species rarely attack primates of other species, but there are cultural differences. Some chimps will attack small monkeys for food. Some African tribes and Southeastern Asian natives will kill monkeys for food source, which is a rarity. So that is a big behavior linchpin. Then finally, you have your foci areas. And if you think about it, for a Sasquatch, one area may be a feeding area, another one may be a mating area. And depending on what's going on in that behavior, and I want you to think of human terms, you have a mall where it's going to be the same type of behavior you have at like the home range. You're just going to kind of acknowledge and walk off and not really pay it much mind. But then you have something like a school. And if something walks into a school that doesn't belong there, you get an aggressive reaction like a territory. So it depends on the kind of activity, and it's kind of more of the gray area of the Sasquatch. Why did it act the way it did? Was it its territory or was it a foci area? And that's the only linchpin. And what you have to do is you have to historically look at your sightings. Well, there seems to be a lot of aggressive stuff going on over here. and there was only one scene, not 2 or 3 or 4. So chances are that may be a territorial thing. And what that does is in each one of those areas, your home range, you shouldn't expect an amount of recidivism. In your foci areas, you may get a higher rate of recidivism, but in your territory, you should get a higher rate, the highest rate of recidivism. And that's where I have my research areas, is where those aggressive encounters have been, just outside of those areas. Try to give it some, and use their natural curiosity to come over to me, because primates are naturally curious.
So what do you think about that, Patrick?
It's fascinating. I'm going to definitely, I've broken down different areas and different uses of areas for this species, by tracking them. And so I'm definitely going to delve into that further and to use in my toolbox. One thing I can say about aggressiveness is aggressive behavior is, without it being solicited, it is a direct relation to, or direct correlation to how many's in the area. Because one of them, even though they can attack, they're formidable just alone. The more there are of them, the more brazen they are. So if you have someone just walks in and then all of a sudden they have a huge aggressive encounter, that's probably because there's 4 or 5 of them hiding, and the one that's out there showing his tail and being aggressive to you, because he knows someone has their back.
And groupthink, think about that, mob rule. That's a primate thing, mob rule. So that would make sense. That all fits actually within primate behavior.
Well, I have an hypothesis, just based on 42 years of looking, and I stress hypothesis because there's no way to back any of this up at this point. But assuming the Sasquatch does exist, I think they probably have family groups, a dominant male, maybe 2 or 3 females and young. And the dominant male tolerates the daughters, but when the sons get to a certain age, he drives them off. And that's what people are seeing most of the time, is these lone males traveling, getting bigger, getting stronger, who may someday take over a family group of their own by either killing the aging dominant male or driving him away. And sometimes when people report a rather sickly one, it may be a former dethroned dominant male that returns to that nomadic lifestyle once, if he's lucky enough not to be killed by whatever drove him away. And that's what people are seeing most of the times, because here in British Columbia, we've got so many small communities where years goes by without any incident, and all of a sudden for a week to 10 days, several people have encounters, and they stop almost as suddenly as they had started, as though one had come into the area, hung around for a little while, and then moved on. Now, I kind of wonder, does that fit in? Like when you talk about primates, chimpanzees, a troop of chimps encounter another troop, they actually go to war.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but gorillas don't.
Yep.
And that's rather strange. Yeah. And orangutans have a dominant male with a number of females, and he drives the sons away, and they get bigger and stronger, and eventually they'll either find a family group of their own. If they never do, they live their whole lives in that nomadic way. It's an hypothesis. I can't prove any of it, but to me, it makes sense.
It fits within the primate models. That's how most primates live.
Yeah.
The weaker males that want to cling on to the troop will.
Yeah.
And the more stronger ones either get set on their own, and they go to find, or they fight it out. But I remember reading particularly that one species of macaques, although they would get loud and boisterous and angry, would allow another species of macaques to travel through their territory. But if the same species of macaques came into their territory, it would be an all-out war.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes perfect sense. Like I said, primates of one species rarely attack, but there are cultural differences. That's why there may be pockets of fairly aggressive Sasquatch. Not saying it's a complete But it's a rarity. I think it's a rarity, and that all comes down to just the primate behavior models.
To the left, scratch a little more to the left there, Patrick.
I'm going to pick his hat off.
Leon's
I'll be his hat. I'll be his hat.
Brady
There's
Bunch.
his hat right there.
Yeah.
Hey, is there some reason all the lower trim guys are over here, and all the guys with the hair are over to that side?
That side.
Oh, I'm sorry, that side.
They're
Yeah.
look at their Goldilocks. Oh, to have hair again. I have that same on my back, but it's braided. It looks really fashionable. But
Well, that's when I go to the barber, I say a little off the back. I mean a little off the back.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I was this close to wearing my bandana.
Mongo, what is your first name? I only know you by your handle.
You're muted, brother.
Kid.
You're muted, brother.
You're muted. You're muted. Unmute yourself.
I'm deaf too, apparently. My name is Russell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I heard you're muted. I'm like, what?
What do you mean by that?
So, Russell, how long have you been online with what you're doing here so far?
I started a little over a year ago with just doing videos, doing interviews, pre-recorded stuff. And about 10 months ago, I started doing live shows weekly, two shows a week. If you go on my channel, I have about 100 videos.
And what's been some of the stuff you've had to negotiate and navigate with yourself personally? Because you obviously are a little bit similar, I think, to us. I mean, we don't know you that well, but
I know.
but you. Oh, well, I mean, well, I'm not saying all of us. I mean, I've seen him periodically.
Some of
it
us.
wasn't for
Different
Matt.
circles.
Mog's is
Matt,
cool.
when he sent me your video yesterday, he says, "Leon, you got to watch this one. You're gonna love this one." So
Yeah,
which I did.
that was a trip.
Yeah. So what's some of the stuff that you, as somebody's been in the scene, online scene for a year or so, what's some of the frustrations, I guess, you've seen out there as a kind of a new eyes on the topic for the online scene?
You know what? I have a problem with people, and I brought it up on my show a few times, and I think I even brought it up last night. It bugs me when people talk matter-of-factly in a subject that is pure speculation. You know, don't at least come up and say, in my opinion, or, you know, and that's just a personal thing that bugs me, is don't throw it out there like,
That's fair.
everything.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
My whole thing is like I can't do like 10 cryptids at once. I got to figure out one at a time. I've had, like I said earlier, I've had paranormal experiences, so I know that exists. Now I'm on this Bigfoot, discovery.
You can't speak matter of factly now.
Yeah. There you
No,
go.
that I know that exists.
So what's the
I
difference?
know that exists.
What's the difference between the two definitions that you'd be using? From
What,
subjective.
did I just sound
experience,
hypocritical for some? Did it come out hypocritical?
It sounds contrary to what you just said. Yeah.
Well, no. I mean, unless you have proof, okay, then I can't even do that. I have witnesses. Let's see. Okay, I believe in the paranormal because of my experiences, and now I have a strong, good idea about Bigfoot. So I want to investigate that and prove to myself. I'm not trying to prove it exists to anybody. This is really a personal journey. And I just really want to know that it exists. But in order for that to happen, I have to have eyes on it.
Question.
Shoot.
Moggs, if you're hiking that trail and you see one out there, and it looks at you dead in your eye and there's no mistaking what it is and it walks off peacefully and you come back, are you going to talk about it matter of factly? I mean, are you going to say, I witnessed this or I believe this, or, because there was a question.
Oh no, I will.
This is a sincere question. Is that my question was about a year ago. When do I get to call what I've seen what it is? That was a sincere question because a lot of people are like, well, you can't say you've seen it because you don't have proof you've seen it. But then again, how do I not call it what I saw? So it's a sincere question for me. I'm not say anything derogatory about anybody's opinion.
Patrick, I may have seen one myself in 2004, but I won't say it because I stick to the facts and I don't deviate facts. I saw a figure. It was about a mile away. It appeared to be jet black in color and it appeared to be walking upright, but it was also a mile away, so I couldn't see details. So I can't say with 100% certainty that I saw a Sasquatch that day in 2004. I can't for the life of me think what a big, weird looking man would have been there, but I can't say it was a Sasquatch because I just simply do not 100% know.
Well, that is absolutely respectful there. I respect that. But at 12 feet, if you see one at 12 feet,
that'd be a little different. Did you encounter one at 12 feet?
In broad daylight.
Okay, now, can you imagine, assuming that the Sasquatch does exist and Patrick saw one at 12 feet, how ridiculous we all sound to him? Still debating whether or not the Sasquatch exists or not to a guy who has seen one at close range, up close like that. People who have actually had encounter, we must sound like fools.
Well, I had a crew that wanted to go out with me. They told me I was full of it. They said, you're full of it, you can't track them, blah, blah, blah. So I take them out and I hand them experiences of what I'm tracking, what I'm finding. And I completely understand disbelief because it took me 3 encounters for me to say, okay, I'm not hallucinating. This is a real being. And so I really understand belief and disbelief. It took me almost 14 years to talk about it. Mm-hmm. So I'm very understanding on things.
I saw one. I've seen one at about 125, 150 feet. Saw another one about 40 feet away. And it was actually a juvenile the second one I saw. It was only about 5.5 foot tall. And I had no problem saying what I saw.
Was it always that case, Steve, or more recently when you got more involved?
Well, I got involved in 98, and I saw that sighting happened in 2011 and 2012 was the other one.
So you were already into the subject.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
okay. It's not your encounter that got you involved.
No. It took me a
How about you,
while.
Patrick? When you had your first encounter, were you involved, or did this get you involved?
No, he thought he was hallucinating.
This
he
was
hallucinating.
Bigfoot never existed. Now, you understand? I'm a third generational tracker. I'm a third generation tracker. Okay, I hunted and fished for my food, most of my childhood. Yeah. I was in the woods. I would laugh a person off a fire for even bringing the subject up because they don't exist. Man, you're nuts. I'd call them, I'd call them all kinds of names. But in 2003, that myth chased me out of the woods for a mile, and it was 12 feet from me the whole time. So, and that bothered me.
Now, did I mishear? But you said you didn't talk about it for the longest time.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah. What was your reasoning for not wanting to talk about it?
First off, I couldn't convince myself that I saw what I saw.
There you go.
Okay, the first time I thought someone spiked my soda, and I threw it down on the floorboard and laughed at myself when I was in my truck driving away from this. And then, armchair researching it and having nightmares and not being able to sleep and finally putting it away and then having a second encounter, that really got me into trying to debunk it. My first encounter my first mission was to debunk them, and I was trying to debunk them And I thought that knocks were a known animal performing an unknown action after dark. And I chased that. I chased that for years until 2011. In 2011, we three of us were at a fire and had one knock, and it was Sasha. She comes in and steps in the firelight and looks at us. And I said, okay, you know, my hypothesis of this being a known being is out the window. They are real. They're flesh and blood. They're right there. We're all looking at it. And I cannot debunk these. So.
I think the best term that I've heard for it was what Meldrum said here a couple of weeks ago, which is the word conviction. When you had that experience 12 feet away, your conviction that these things existed went up significantly compared to someone who has never seen one.
Well, my conviction of that I was insane or someone spiked my damn drink was that's what I had.
Well, okay, sure.
You had that moment of
but you
disbelief.
debunked that over time.
Yeah, 2011, after the third encounter, she steps in. My son's there, my girlfriend's there. We're all looking at it. The dogs are going ape crap. And we get in the truck and we're leaving. And we're all talking to each other. Did that just happen? Yes, that just happened. And so you have to accept. Okay, scientifically, if you can reproduce the same outcome using the same formula, then it's not a fluke. And so, this has been reproduced, and we produce knocks dozens of times, dozens upon dozens of times. It's just that this was the one where she walked in, and I actually saw what walked in out of the woods that was knocking. And I confirmed this is what's knocking, and this is her, and it's real, and there's no way I can debunk it or get away from the fact of this. Because if I could have took a magic wand and did that and made Bigfoots all disappear, I would have. Because I didn't want them to exist because they were invading my privacy and primitive survival.
Patrick, I don't want you to go get a magic wand, but I want you to start carrying a camera with you whenever you go. Okay.
It's not that simple. And I'll say this to everyone here on the panel. You track them to where and do what when you find them. Like you just don't run up on a Bigfoot and take a picture of it. Or you don't have the training to pull out a camera and take a perfect picture with a nice zoom Canon camera.
No, that is true. Yeah. However, and you got to take into account human reaction is human reaction. You only get a brief second, you got that few moments of and it may be gone before you get the camera up. But someone like in Patrick's case, who seems to have more luck than someone like me, who may have had one distant sighting in 42 years, I want him to start carrying a camera.
Yeah, but it's not. I'll say this.
I know, but I want him to start carrying a camera.
The first one I saw, I had a camera in my pocket. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah, I had the camera when I had my sighting, possible sighting. I had the camera sitting right on the seat right beside me, and I did bring my Land Rover to a halt and grab it, but by the time I got out, it was gone.
You can't.
It was
and the second time.
The
second time, I had a reaction like Patrick did. I didn't want. I saw the 5.5 foot one getting out of my tent, use a tree, 1:30 in the morning, and there it was. And my first reaction is like, no, I got to be dreaming. I got to be something. And then the next day, all this other stuff was being told to me. And I'm like, okay, this is what happened last night. So.
Dude, go ahead, Patrick. Just hype your thumb.
People, Patrick, if you would give me just
one
moment. If people have been trying to chase them with cameras on the ground in their environments for 50 plus years since the PG film, okay, with almost no luck. I mean, so what I mean by that is the PG film is the gold standard. Nothing has been brought to the table in that time better than that.
No, as a matter of fact, that's what we compare everything to.
Right. So people have been trying for 50 plus years, running around on the ground, thinking they have cameras. Even today with what I would call crappy thermal, anything that's cheap FLIR, Casper the Ghost, no definition whatsoever. You would have to have advanced thermal, not even $1,500. 10 grand is your starting point. People aren't doing that. They're not. But they are running around the woods thinking they might get a shot or they might get some crappy thermal and dudes, the evidence is, the data is in. You can't do it. You cannot outsmart them.
I don't know. No.
All right, go ahead, Leon. Go ahead. Floor is yours.
No. The problem is people are not trained to use the equipment like a military person automatically goes to automatic. That's what the problem is, which I've harped on for 5 years.
Maybe.
Not maybe. It's not maybe. If you are sitting there and you have a camera and you have all this equipment and you don't ever, you're waiting for the Sasquatch shot and you've had that camera for 5 years and you haven't taken a shot of a squirrel, a rabbit, a deer, a cow, an antelope, a flying dragon, then don't expect that you're going to be ready when you see this thing for the first time, no matter you've been in it for 10 years. You are not going to go to automatic camera. It's like people with weapons in the military. They don't think about getting their gun. They got the gun already in position. It has to be instinctually trained in your system.
But that's a muscle memory.
You have to train your body to do that.
Okay, so how about this? How about this as a question? Do we need a hyper-aware professional photographer or a Navy SEAL? Or do we need to combine those two things?
Well, I think we just need to understand that our capacities are not like they could have been. I tell you, if we had one sec there, Stephen. Like Patrick. I mean, Patrick, it can be calm in situations, especially if he's third generation kind of stuff. Is he used to using a camera? I'm not too sure if he is, but if you can replace it with a camera, so it's like you said, it's almost in your memory of your system to automatically go for it. You're not freaked out about getting the camera. The camera's already actually up on you. Now we have not. You say for 50 years. Well, if we were from 50 years ago, that imprint would be a little more stronger if we shifted over to a camera instead of a rifle than it is today. So the idea that we are out in the bush all the time and we have all these people in the bush, most people have no idea what it means to walk through the bloody bush. I mean, we think we do, but you go. Listen, when I challenged you, I said to you, what I want you to do is go to a place camping by yourself, and walk up the road at nighttime by yourself, and take a measurement of how long it takes before your system goes into the willy zone.
Yeah.
And that's the part you have to get to the other side of. It's instead of like,
I agree.
Like Justin from Mountain Beast Mysteries, Nick's from Roskill's Bushcraft, Alex. Those guys are used to being in the forest, so they're familiar with what's natural in the forest. You're still going to get spooked, just like if you're trained in military training, and Thomas knows about this because he was in the military, and so as Nick is in the military. You're going to still get alerted, but your system goes to the training instead of the freaked outness. You're automatically doing that, and so that's the skill level that that's just missing. I'm not blaming anybody because we just don't do that. I mean, I put myself in situations professionally, what I do, and part of the way I do it is by putting myself in the bush where I'm absolutely terrified, because that's how you come back to a relaxed state when you train your body not to go to that zone and be hijacked. So maybe you can make the shot, or like Matt from Central Florida. He has his camera running all the time. He's a wildlife photographer. He likes to film all the time. That's what you do. You film all the time. And you get the right equipment, which I'm glad he's starting to show this new these new cameras he has, where it's 4K for far distances. So if you got something on the background, you can pull it right up here so we can still see it's on a blob squatch, or you have to circle it or whatever. You can see it exactly the same as if it was right me in front of your face, but I'm 200 yards away. And that technology, once he starts, and I said, encouraged him the other day, you need to keep showing this technology or this camera style you use, so that people can say, wait a second, this would get rid of all the blob squatches. Everyone who says, I can't get this zoomed in there, go follow him on his channel, look at his camera, look what the capacity of that camera is. You can't hide. It can go right through these little twigs like this, 200 yards away, and it goes through the twigs, doesn't blur it. And it goes in on the other side, and he shows you examples. This is a squatch. Then he zooms in. It's not a squatch. Or this is this, and he zooms in. It's not that. That's the technology we need. That's coming. You're talking about this drone idea that you want to work with. Yeah, the high-end drones and stuff coming down the pike. Maybe not my generation, because I'll probably drop dead before most of you guys. But
they're already here. They're already here.
Well, I know, but again, it's getting it into the right hands. It's not just that it's already here. I don't know how many people I know. There's one, and all of those are okay. That's gonna help the game, Okay, we need about 100 of us that know what we're doing.
I agree, and that's what I'm advocating for. As far
and
as
then the stuff that CC's working on there with his technology wisdom and stuff. I mean, it's brilliant stuff. It's certainly up the game for being able to quadrant out an area, a nice chunk of area. So if they're coming in, it's triggered in a variety of different ways with technology, everything from motion sensors to detection sensors to camera sensors, and they're all connected to each other. And they're small, and it's not the same thing. So Russell, were you going to say something earlier?
Yeah, Russell. Yeah.
No, I'm just listening.
Russell, pick his brain on that.
Yeah.
I do have a question for Russell.
Good.
Because I had a similar issue or a similar history, is that I actually got into Bigfoot before paranormal. And, I had paranormal experiences as a kid, as did my parents. It was kind of funny to watch that transgression. My mother thought my father was crazy. My father was actually the first one to see something. Then my mother saw it, and then I thought they were both crazy, and then I'm 15 and I see it. So was it a hard reconciliation for you to separate the two? Because a lot of people ask me all the time, how can you separate the two? Because there's so many people who think Bigfoot's paranormal. But for me, it was quite well, because I was in Bigfoot first, probably. But how was it for you? How easy was it for you to reconcile that Bigfoot was a flesh and blood thing and not something otherwise?
I don't think I've reconciled with that yet.
Okay.
Honestly, I think, there's things that we don't know, and
fair enough.
I don't think it's paranormal. I just think it's more supernatural, not, it might be normal to them, but to us it's, super normal or supernatural, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So I don't know enough to rule it out.
Patrick.
Yeah, going back to what we were all discussing as far as stopping, taking pictures, fumbling cameras, and what Leon's take was on that is all spot on. And what I wanted to point out was that this particular, all this testimony to that should be extremely important to people who are going out into the field, and to avoid this. Don't do what we did. Don't mess up like we messed up. You know what I mean? And particularly Mr. Moggs here, who's fixing to do another 168 here in November. So that's part of why I was trying to pick Steve's brain about tools to take into the field for an investigator. How do we up our game as investigators? Not looking back at people, but looking at this target species and the areas we're in, and how can we apply those specific techniques to, you're there. There's no phone call or live wire where we can do a shout out to someone.
A lifeline.
There's no lifeline there. We're right here. What tools can we memorize? What tools can we memorize and implement to the situation that would up our game? That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, just the way I always say it is that they have articulate hands and feet, large brains, forward-facing eyes, small snout. By definition, that's primate. So learn what you can about primates, how they're curious, and use that curiosity against them. Autumn Williams, a long time ago, used to have some conversations with her, always said, you got to make them feel like they're in control. Otherwise, you're never going to see one, never going to experience one. So that's my whole thing when I get out there. Do something, even if it's off the cuff, do something goofy, because they want to investigate. When we hear something go boom, we're all the little animals scamper. But that's why when we get around a campfire, don't whisper, talk normally, laugh, have a good time, because we're their television. I always feel we're their TV, we're their entertainment. Primates need, we have large brains, so we need stimulation. So,
well, the key part too is in that situation, it goes back to the camera situation. What we're talking about, the camera situation, is all of a sudden you hear something, don't become quiet, because they'll sense that you're quiet. Yep. Stay exactly the same level, but still talk to each other, so that there's no differential. And heaven forbid, don't discharge emotional energy outside into the environment from your body, because they're going to pick that up 25 feet away. So, you can't do that. Now, you're saying, well, how would you know that, Leon? Well, because any kind of mammal operates as the same as a toddler does. They can sense the environment, including through walls, up to 25 feet away. It's called emotional energy discharge. Children are, when you train dogs or horses, if you don't have intent with a feeling of what you're asking the horse to do, or the dog, it doesn't understand what you're saying. You can say sit all you want, but if you don't have that sit or come here, you see people with their dogs, get over here, get over here. Human beings are the only pack animal that follow unstable pack leaders. We're the only pack animal on the whole bloody planet that will follow an unstable pack leader. That tells you something about religion. So, but any other pack animals won't do, pack animals won't do that, because they look for the most solid. Solid isn't about being angry; it's about being centered and solid, and as connected with its own sense of self that it can possibly have. So,
always remember too, with your getting back to the camera situation, is if your camera has the ability, have it set to manual. Because you see something in the 50 feet in the trees, and you have it set on audio, it's going to focus in on the close trees, and whenever you're looking at it, it's going to be another blob squatch.
That's why I like Matt's technology. I have a question for Steve, not CC Steve, but Steve, I don't know, CC, if you asked him this question. Now, earlier today, I guess on the show, because I was late, you came up with some kind of a standard for yourself in regards to research. Is that right, Steve? How do you apply that to the paranormal for yourself, for ghosts and stuff like that? Or what we talked about last time for 6 hours, by the way, we were yakking. Yeah, that's it there. So how do you apply that with your other ideas of paranormal or ghosts and stuff like that?
It's pretty much the same. You want to look for consistencies in stories. You want to look for you want to look at the evidence. You want to pass it around. I mean, and then you just do your investigation. I mean, you take the accounts, and there's been a lot of paranormal cases I've turned down because things don't seem to, jive. Sometimes I'll lay a suggestion out there and I'll see if they'll bite on it. Again, a lot of it's gut feeling. If are the people telling me the truth, and there's other people, you separate your witnesses, you talk to them. Like I said, forensic evidence in a paranormal investigation is nil. Pretty much.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
I mean, what you can collect is some video evidence and some audio evidence and stuff like that. And then, some of the other, like a lot of people use EMF to, and EMF readers to me are a double-edged sword sometimes. You got to make sure, like if I'm in a place with no power, okay, you're getting EMF readings, strong, consistent ones are a bit weird. But
unless you got a cell phone in your pocket.
Right. Well, exactly. And that's why things like there are protocols, cell phones go on airplane mode, all that wonderful stuff, where they get turned off. The same thing with walkie-talkies. Walkie-talkies will set off an EMF meter like nobody's business. So I don't use really EMF to gauge a lot unless they're in response to questions, and they're also engaged with other measuring devices or other electronics. And what I have found in my paranormal investigations, where there is paranormal activity, you will get all of the little indicators going on all the stuff rather than just one of the items. When you get one of the items, that's a problem. But when you get them all going in response to questions at different times, can you show me on that? And it'll show up on that. Can you show me on that? And it'll show up on that. There's some validity to it. Now, again, validity scientifically, I have a different mission when it comes to paranormal.
Yeah, I understand that from
Right.
your
So,
research.
with the Sasquatch, it's to get that information to the scientists to prove the existence, to validate witnesses. When it comes to the paranormal, it's to validate the witnesses and help them understand what may or may not be going on. And that's the difference. I'm not worried about science when it comes to the paranormal. It's about helping the people. So it's a different type of mission.
Great. Russell, what's your approach on that, since you're kind of in that same interest? Like, do you do any of that kind of field investigation with paranormal, or are you just collecting information from people's stories, or?
I don't do paranormal field investigation. I just started getting into the woods with Bigfoot. I've had my experiences happened over the years a few times that were convincing. There were witnesses where there were actually manipulation of the environment through an invisible source. It was cool.
Hey guys, I'm fixing to get out of here. I got a 4:30 in the morning comes early.
Oh, right.
Oh my goodness.
I appreciate y'all having me on. Moggs, cool to see you again. Glad
You too, Patrick.
And,
Patrick,
Take it easy,
one last
Patrick.
question. What did they put in your drink? There's going to be a market for that.
well, apparently it wasn't spiked. It was just my own.
It was truth.
It was the lack of the ability to accept the reality. So bye, y'all have a good night, guys. Good night, chat. It's been wonderful.
Take care,
Yeah,
Patrick.
Patrick.
See you,
See you,
bud.
Patrick. Oh, and then we're shuffled again. There we go. So, Thomas, I asked Patrick the other day, I was talking to you about this too, which is about getting you and him together so you could go through your questionnaires with him regarding his sightings.
Mm-hmm.
And he's open to doing that with you. Are you
Sure,
open to it?
sure, anytime.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to confirm that too. So I'll set that up eventually with you guys, and we'll record it all as well. It won't be live.
Something that Steve was talking about a little while ago. Be people in camp. Sit around, talk. Don't necessarily stop talking when you hear something, or you're going to make it a game with whatever's out there making noise. But what we do is we'll set up recorders 100 to 200 yards outside of camp, so they're beyond the range of our voices.
Same way.
We still record in camp so that we can debunk any sounds that we pick up. And then we just go through what sounds were going on in the forest. And I'm working on triangulation stuff, so I can even get an idea of where it came from.
Yep, nice.
Now I'll give you an interesting an experiment I run every when I have my team, and I run this experiment every time. And one time it did hit. It was kind of interesting. I did learn that one of their the reason why sometimes they throw rocks is a probative thing. Sent the team out. So we're all around the fire, quarterling, having a good time. Okay, time to send the team out. So I send them all out down the road. They're all out. Me and another researcher stay by. Camp's perfect. We just don't say a word. Just sit there quietly by the fire. After about 10 minutes goes by, here comes a rock flying into camp. So, of course, we get up, we look. Hey, what was that? And then I said, because what I think they're doing, because in 2011, I actually, somewhere I have this recording, there was only 3 of us, and we left the camp, and something walked up to the camp. You could hear the footsteps, and you hear this little away. I'm like, what the hell? So then the next time, a rock was thrown. And I think what they do, sometimes they throw a rock to see if there's a reaction. If you get a reaction, oh, okay, can't go there. And this also happened to another researcher I know who was working in Oklahoma. and he was out in the Arbuckle Mountains, and he was in a field, and he had put a generator with a TV on it, and he let that TV go every night. Nothing happened. 3 nights in a row. The fourth night, he decided, the hell with the TV. I'm just going to, go to sleep. And that night, his camp got pelted with rocks because they didn't hear it. Somebody's still there. They see the tents. There's been times like the Navajo. When I was on the Navajo, I talked to one of the rangers there. He says, "Oh yeah, a couple seasons ago, these 2 campers came down and said, 'Can you get our tents?' We don't want to go back up there." And they're like, "Why? We don't want to go back up there." They wouldn't say why. He goes up there, and their camp had been tossed, and there's bare footprints in the snow everywhere. Large foot tracks, as the Navajo like to call it, large foot tracks. And that was from a Navajo, park ranger. So I do think that they like, sneaking around our campsites when we're not there at night.
The observation I have from multiple sources also is that those probative, communicative, even play a little bit rocks tend to be small rocks that are tossed. The threat rocks tend to be 2-hand rocks that are thrown with a fair amount of force.
Yep. Yeah, that tells you the energy discharge of the animal as well, right? I mean, if they're pissed, they're going to pick up a larger object. They're not going to pick up a twig and bang a twig up against a tree. They're going to pick up a log and go, "Rah!" Like if you watch chimps and you watch gorillas go through the bush. I mean, the energy discharge is pretty intense. So.
The night I was talking about.
Oh, there it is.
That was the rock that was thrown. And there is no rock like this in that particular area.
A squirrel. It's obviously squirrel, Steve.
It's obviously a squirrel. But it was funny because you can hear this thing coming through the trees.
Yeah.
So. Leon, Leon, you got to stop using big words like energy discharge.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
These guys just used a word that was even more difficult for me to understand. I don't understand. I was going to say, you guys should describe what that word means for people who might not understand what you were talking about.
Steve, CT, can you explain to me what energy discharge means?
Did I use that word?
No, but can you explain it?
Well, I believe what Leon said was emotional discharge. Okay, emotional energy discharge.
He said energy discharge.
I did say energy. It's called emotional energy discharge. If you're married or in a relationship, and Pat, I've seen this a few times with you and Kim, and your backs are towards each other, and
all of a sudden, Pat realizes he might understand what emotional discharge is.
Never mind.
It's when you don't see the person's face to feel them come across the room, but you certainly feel them come across the room. And this is where we get the phrase "cutting the air like a knife." There's an environmental shift that happens in the room, and it's not the person hasn't said anything, but boy, you can feel it. Or if you walked across somebody and say you meet a sociopath or a psychopath, not in all cases, or you meet somebody who's not right in the head, all of a sudden you're talking to them and all of a sudden you can feel this shift happening. It's almost like it makes you feel awkwardly uncomfortable. So that's what I'm talking about when we talk about toddlers or animals. You don't talk to a toddler or a young kid because they don't care what you're saying. It's what you're feeling. And it's the same way with animals as well, especially if you train dogs or horses. It's about you having an emotional balance inside of yourself. So you use the emotional balance, like when I was attacked by that grizzly that was stalking me. I was like, it's 10, 15 feet in front of me, and this has been stalking me for 45 minutes. If I didn't do a technique called emotional energy discharge to emotionally shift its insides, I wouldn't be here today. So
let me address this real quick.
What's that?
Yeah. And then I want to ask you a question, Leon. Listen, guys, chat, Bigfoot Anon is welcome here. I don't think he's being out of line. I know who he is. I watched him on Russell's show last night. Okay. He's welcome here. So just be nice to him, reach out to him, try and be his, offer an olive branch. if you will. Like, he's welcome here. So,
But that
yeah,
goes both ways, Pat.
No,
I mean,
no,
he's got to behave as well.
yeah, and that's true too. All right, Bigfoot on. You have to, don't be rude to people in chat. But he's being more like emphatic and passionate about what he's trying to say, sort of like he was on your show last night. And that can come across very like rude.
Bushy.
Yeah. So everybody just chill. He's welcome here. I haven't seen anything. Maybe I missed something, but I just have to address that real quick. So
I'm going to add one more thing to the emotional discharge thing.
Okay.
It would affect what people would call the vibe of the room.
Yes.
But it is entirely different from the vibrational energy thing, which is the thing that Patrick has gotten under his skin recently. What the heck is that? What does that mean? Yeah, that's a different panel.
Yes, it is a different show, really. So, Leon, though, aren't sociopaths extremely clever, manipulative people, though?
Those are psychopaths.
No, sociopaths.
Well, sociopaths and psychopaths are two different. One is from a behavioral environment, and the other one's from a neurological missing part of the brain.
Right.
So, when I've dealt with sociopaths, especially like last year, I had to deal with a sociopath and try to warn a few organizations that you have a sociopath on staff here, and he's going to come in. First thing they'll do is they'll come in and they'll split the hierarchy of the system. So, because they know their time is limited. And they're usually about 5 steps ahead of everybody. They'll answer everything and even show emotions that will appear to be, to a non-trained observer, to be sincere. So they'll cry. You confront them on something, they'll look like they're crying. They're not really crying. They're showing like they're crying because they have a total agenda. And both a sociopath and more of a sociopath than a psychopath, because a psychopath really doesn't care about that from one angle. Whereas a sociopath, he thinks you're stupid, and it's your fault that you're that stupid. So it's my right that I get to play you.
He's trying to manipulate you.
Very manipulative.
Yeah. Well, but they don't see it as manipulation. They don't have empathy and compassion. They operate out of guilt and responsibility. So if you're dealing with a narcissist, which is just a little lower than a sociopath, a narcissist will always flip it around. And this is why if you're married to somebody who happens to be a narcissist, the problem with it is by the time a relationship's done, you've lost your sense of identity and your capacity to believe what you actually believe, because you're too busy. If you're good-hearted and you say you're in love with somebody, well, they do a strange behavior. You rationalize it away because you're an honest person and I love this person. So you rationalize it away. Maybe they had a bad day. Maybe had this. They're not thinking that way at all. They're thinking eventually where they're going to take you is compliance at all costs to your emotional expense. And the vulnerability,
that's heavy.
It is pretty heavy.
Yeah. And
it's kind of like in the way when we talk about any of these topics we're chatting about. That's why it's important to use science. Science helps you be solid. If you don't know how to use techniques to come back to yourself, because most people are not themselves. I mean, I deal with them all the time. Most people are split psychologically and emotionally by the time it begins around anywhere between 3 to 7 years old when you're in a magical stage of development. But if you have a parent that's chronically criticizing you, this slow chipping away of you ends up happening because you're dependent on these parents. And plus you want to connect primally with your bonding with your parent. So the problem is there's a sacrifice that happens to you, which is the sacrifice of you being able to be you as you compromise to be what the other person wants you to be. So you've heard me say this idea of, can I trust you with my truth? Well, if I can't trust you with my truth, then I have to do something about that. So I come over here and I show you I'm Leon and I have a Bigfoot channel. I know everything about Bigfoot. Now I'm doing that to get a reward system back because I have no sense of my own value and worth to stand in. But as soon as I move over here to do the act of Leon, I lose my reality. as I try to win you guys over as if I know everything about Bigfoot, which I know jack shit about a Bigfoot.
Yeah, what do you know about Bigfoot?
That's the reality of it, right?
Do they eat berries? Do you know that?
Well, according to some people, I guess so. I don't know. We'll have to wait to see if we have any encounters, and maybe we should do some investigations. Has anyone seen a Sasquatch with blue around their faces or red around their faces? Hopefully from strawberries and raspberries and not from blood. So I mean, the human condition, you're not in control. We're not in control. We think we're in control of our life, but you're not in control of your life as much as you think you are, because your brain, again, isn't you. You're not your brain. Your brain has all these different programming systems that operate automatically. You're not thinking about breathing. You're not thinking about hearing me until I just said that. Now you're reflecting on, oh, yeah, I can hear Leon. Oh, I see what he means. That's all automatic. So it's not just in those areas. It's about when you see the unknown, the brain goes to the primal part, goes to pareidolia files, goes to your files, what looks like that object, comes up with a pareidolia vision for it. And then this is all happening at the speed of light. And then the other part of your brain is coming up with a narration of what it might be. And so that looks like a Sasquatch. It's a burnt stump, but I can't see that because it's dusk. So it looks like a Sasquatch. That's where your brain's already put in there. Brings it around the frontal cortex, gives you a script, which is, that looks like a Sasquatch, but is it a Sasquatch? And if you don't vet that, and you're hooked into wanting to believe, like Thomas has mentioned 100 times since I've met him, is this faith idea. I want to believe. Well, if you want to believe something, you got to be very cautious, because that's setting your whole brain up with intent to look for the evidence to validate that.
And those stump squatches are very patient.
Yes, and not to mention they can shift shades, right?
Right. Well, I don't know. Like Steve Kulls, like, what did you see? Was that? I mean, was that in play, to be fair, or were you primed to see a Sasquatch because you've been around this world?
No,
too long.
No, not at all. I wasn't expecting to see anything, especially the second one. The second one, like I said, I tried to self-debunk myself. No, I just stepped out of my tent. What the? I wasn't expecting it, and that was kind of the reaction I had. No, I gotta be tired. I just gotta be no.
Okay, Steve, we did this earlier with Roger Patterson. Let's say Steve Kulls gets to interview Steve Kulls about his sighting.
Oh, God.
Well, your first step.
Huh? What's the first step?
Yeah.
I don't know. Send him to the loony bin, I suppose.
Well, I wanted to share something in there too. There's we talked a little bit about this too. There's a big difference when people believe they saw a Sasquatch, and Steve, you would know about this. Mm-hmm. When you're investigating people, there's people who believe they saw something compared to a person when you're investigating that did see something. And you can pick the cues out in their body language, the tone, the way they're articulating it, right? Compared to a lot of people who've believe they saw a Sasquatch compared to ones who saw a Sasquatch. And those are the ones.
I'll give you a great example. I had a friend of mine who I met strangely in the paranormal world. And he was saying, yeah, I'm not saying this is a Sasquatch by any means, but when I was, and he kept telling me it wasn't a Sasquatch. It just, no. And he had a sighting, and where it was, he was like, well, I was fishing on Kinderhook Creek. And I go, stop right there. Was this the 1980s? He's like, yeah. You saw the Kinderhook creature. Because at that time, everybody was seeing him there. But he never came out public, never said nothing to anybody, never even wanted to believe. And he's like, I don't know if listen, Jack, you saw a Sasquatch. And it took a little while before it finally clicked. He goes, finally, he's like, he called me up. He's like, all right, you're right. He goes, I guess I've been trying to tell myself all these years I didn't. But he goes, I never knew that there was sightings in that area, let alone in that time period. So, it's one of those things where I knew he had seen something, and he just wanted to, convince himself. He described it up, down, left, right, what it did. Gesundheit. And
I thought I turned the mic off fast enough. It was coming up quick though.
oh, you did, but you could see it.
You could see it.
I didn't hear it, but I felt it. I was like,
sorry, let me wipe that off, you guys. Sorry about that.
He's very perceptive.
Yeah, sorry, Russell.
You changed our environmental psychological response.
You just gave me COVID.
That's okay. You'll be immune now.
yeah.
Oh.
But for the most part, you know, the people that I talk to a lot of times, this is the first time that they've seen it, and a lot of times I didn't even believe these things. You know, you'll get comments like that it wasn't even in their belief system. But then, you know, and sometimes it'll be months before the report gets to me, or before they start talking, they start doing they start going online. What the hell did I see? And then they start, you know, looking, and it's got its positives, it's got its negatives. So really now with the level of information on the web, it's not like 20 years ago where somebody had seen something and they're coming to you with a big question mark. They're coming to you now after that, what the hell did I see? And they start tapping on the keyboard and they start seeing these things. So you gotta, that's the other thing too, is one of my questions I ask is, well, what internet research have you done? You know, have you been to this site? Have you been to that site? And then they start becoming more open. Well, I visited this, I visited that, and I heard they can do this. And I go, whoa, slow down. You know, and that's another bit. There's a bit of information overload, and there's a lot of misinformation overload. So,
well, I find too, when you're doing witnesses, as even the ones, or not, the problem is, we talk about, at least when I'm teaching, we talk about functionality and dysfunctionality. And the problem with functionality and dysfunctionality is it looks the same on the outside. So someone's showing you love and affection, but the motivation behind it is two different things. So I so many times I've had people who've said they saw a Sasquatch and they used the same phrase like Patrick used. I didn't believe in it, right? But those are body language terms. I'm trying to think of what the actual technical term is for it. But they do it so it sounds like it's good to the narration of the story they're sharing with you, instead of actually being truthful about it. Now, the good thing about Patrick is, I mean, he sat down and talked for 3 hours online and filmed the whole thing. And he's got all the other extra stuff you're looking for in the conversation. You know, it's not this, I never believed in these things, because I just finished doing a report. There's a video on my channel there that shows the guy even says that, you know, I never believed in these things, but I'm a believer now. You know, he told the reporter that. Yeah, well, that sounds good for the narration, as he shows this photo that he has of the Sasquatch footprint on his property, which is from a book, Sasquatch book, another guy's book or whatever like that, which is actually a human footprint. And so, I don't know why people, this guy particularly, I mean, to be in a small community like here in Kelowna and have a neighborhood post on the Facebook neighborhood page saying that a Sasquatch has come through. Has anyone else seen it? Here's a picture of this footprint. His name is on the Facebook thing. Then he goes to the press. His name's on the press. Everybody in that section of that neighborhood knows this guy. I mean, did you not think past this about I'm on the right of saying I saw a Sasquatch? Yeah, but did you think of what's going to happen when they find out that none of this is true? And you live in
just stop with did you think?
Yeah, there's the good one, Steve. Yeah, totally.
Well, there are, like in all worlds, there are, you know, in my world, there are bright criminals and there are very dumb criminals. And that is a case of somebody wanting to feel special very badly, but didn't think of the long term, didn't play for the long ball.
Yeah.
You know, the long ball, you know, and you know, there are, like I said, the psychopaths are notorious for being able to operate under the radar without, he's such a great guy and blah, blah.
Yep.
They are the super manipulators that have these really hidden undertones.
Yeah.
That, and
communal ones.
Yeah. But I don't think there are too many Bigfoot psychopaths. I think they're sociopaths. They have some sort of narcissistic value where they want to project themselves as being this great leader, and then you look at and then there's the ones that have the dollar signs in their heads, and you know, I can think of one Canadian in particular who likes to charge $3,000 on expeditions, who's going to come out with some great new evidence in the next week and a half or week.
You must have had a coupon for that. I thought it was $5,000. I thought it was $5,000.
Well, it depends.
Oh, wait,
Well, hold on.
that's a lot less in America.
It's $20 in a sandwich if you're blonde and about 5'5".
Yeah.
So,
And I'll leave you in the bush with her because I don't want to deal with it. And she'll have to find her way out with you. Yeah, that's all that story too, right? Anyway, sorry. I know it's insane. It's so frustrating.
But but the most we deal with are the people that just have this need to feel important. And is it malicious? I don't consider that malice. I just consider that a psychological flaw of theirs. They just want to feel really important, and that's why they're out there every day doing I'm out here doing research. And we had 4 or 5 squatches out there, and they were making noise, and every day. Come on, not one shred of evidence. Mm-hmm. And then they turn around and say, "Oh, we had great evidence." And, well, where is it?
We can't show it to you right now.
Yeah. It's classified, or we've blurred it.
Yeah, Cece, are you thinking?
Sorry, Pat. I didn't mean to bring that up.
What I've been thinking about is another thing that we didn't quite touch on a lot earlier in the show, which is there's a lot of channels out there that are bringing us your story. Some are genuinely curious, some are just telling stories for entertainment purposes, and they'll bring someone on who has potentially had a really traumatic experience, has all of the PTSD issues from this super intense experience. And what you do is you drag them on, you drag the story back out of them, you put them through this whole experience again, and then thanks so much, have some coffee, we'll talk to you later. Next story.
Yeah.
What are the risks to an individual of that sort of thing?
Well, I've always been a firm believer in I met a guy, and he's been out there. He's been on a bunch of shows, Dave Groves. And Dave had a sighting, and I was doing a lecture at Cabela's down in Wheeling, West Virginia, and Dave was there. And we had a long discussion. And I say, Dave, why don't you want to tell your story? He goes, I'm afraid nobody will believe me. I'm afraid, this, that, the other thing. People think I'm crazy. I said, if you're willing, I want to pull you up on the stage to tell your story. And it's going to feel like a weight off your chest. And he said, okay, I'll do it. And he got up there as nervous as he was. He told the story. Nobody made fun of him. I said, anybody have questions for Dave? And people were asking, well, what did it, what did the face look like? What did this look like? What did that look like? And I said, okay, we'll take one more question for Dave, because I didn't want to take up more than 10 minutes or so. And Dave got off. And then when I got done with my lecture, I came down. Dave was like, thank you. He goes, that was a big weight off my chest to actually be able to tell that story and people not judge me and people actually ask me about it, because I feel so much better. And since then, he's been able to openly talk about it. So there are certain times it helps. And there's certain times. And
we've had a live forum in front of actual people.
Yes, absolutely.
As opposed to online, you're at home alone, revisiting this trauma over a computer connection.
Right. But you see, it's also the responsibility of the person bringing that person on to protect them. That's why when I have
one of the first questions I always ask is, do they wish to remain confidential?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the big thing. When I get somebody on a show, if they're having any listen, we can keep you confidential. We're going to take questions. We're not going to, and if somebody's, asking some critical questions, that's fine. Expect that. But we're not going to allow X, Y, and Z. We're not going to allow somebody to, ignore the chat. Don't look at the chat. You stick with what we're going to protect you by your side. And that's the way we do it. And then I, as a matter of fact, I'm one of the few shows that actually talks about that to witnesses is, how did that make you feel? How did you feel after that? Have you had trouble sleeping? Have had and like the very first time I had my sighting, it just played over and over and over and over and over in my head. Like, oh my God, and yeah, it caused a sleepless night or two because it's just playing over in my head. Like,
If I think about it enough, I'll get all the answers.
Yeah, yeah, no,
I'll be
you're
awake.
insane.
That's what's going to happen.
But but the whole thing is that I'm a witness, so I understand some of what they're, even though, hey, I was a researcher and I know what it did to me. I can't expect what it would have done to somebody like a Patrick, who it wasn't in their belief system. It's a bunch of hooey, and then all of a sudden, no wonder he can't take a picture. His mind is trying to process what he's seeing. And that's another big reason why we don't get a lot of pictures, and why we need to be trained, is because, and that's what I've been doing is now I'm very happy when I go out on an expedition and I get some wildlife on my equipment. All right. Yeah. I went out to Kentucky, and you'll all see on Sunday, I get a bat. I was like, oh yeah, look at the bat. And he's swooping down, grabbing mosquitoes on the night vision. I'm like, this is awesome. So I'm happy I got something on there, because practice makes perfect, and you're right. You got to get that trigger, and my whole, I remember my rationale when I had the camera in my pocket the first time is, if I move this light, it's going to take off. So I'm just going to keep it there. And it kept looking back at me. And I think it was trying to figure out, does it see me, or is it just shining the light this way?
Yeah.
But the minute I moved that light, off it went.
Well, there's another part too for me is I've been wanting to see one with my brain I have today, even though I feel I've seen one when I was younger. But I don't think I would, and I know what's going to be one of the problems is I don't want to grab my camera, because I'm not going to be wanting to even think about grabbing my camera, because I get to finally see it. I want to absorb all the information, and then maybe track it down again, then film it. But I would hope that my cameras that are automatic, because the good thing is I got just little buttons I just have to push and all my cameras come on, kind of thing, that I'll have enough sense to at least do that. But I know for one thing, I don't really give a shit whether anyone's seeing what I'm seeing at that moment. I know I give a shit about seeing it, and I want to absorb all of it as much as I can, and then maybe sculpt what I'm looking at. That'd be the next thing I would do. So I get the emotional imprint of what I'm seeing, so I can go back to the sculpture of it as a reference point of what its primal look is, its structure, all that kind of stuff. I could have that with a camera, but I'm wired a little differently. My brain's actually wired backwards from the general population, so it's kind of hard to explain that to people. Right. But sometimes you'll catch me online, think backwards, and I think I'm thinking forwards, as you guys would listen to me, but I'm thinking from a totally different angle, and I think that's just it's a gifting in one way, but it's because you see life totally different than the average population. But, and another side of it is, how do you articulate and flip it around so they understand what you're saying and stuff. But yeah, I mean, for me, parts of me would be just like, I don't give a shit. This is neat. Look at that. I mean, Thomas, you and I were roughly the same age here, and it'd be just nice. Like I say to Thomas all the time, I just want to, if I find one, I would say to Thomas, I'm going to phone you up and say, I don't give a shit what you're doing right now. Phone in sick. Get your ass over here, because they're here right now.
You won't have to. You won't have to phone them. They'll probably hear you. They'll probably hear you without a phone.
Even now, Leon, if I come to see you, I'm breaking the law, because I'm not allowed to leave the Lower Mainland because it's a COVID thing.
No, that's okay. I'll write up. What's the form we need now? We need the travel exemption form in regards to.
Yeah.
He's going to
the government's using COVID as an excuse to turn us into a show us your papers society.
He's going to pole vault over the wall that we built around Canada.
Well, we know the territory better than they'll stick to the roads. Let's just have to drive around the roads.
If you're a foreigner watching the news in this country for the last 3 years, you'd want to build a wall too.
Hey, I'll tell you, Leon, if that happens, I don't care what the law says. I'm there.
I've always said that the Canadians must feel like those people that live, in the apartment above the meth lab.
God. I think it's more about we're worried we're living above the apartment with the meth lab. We're hoping it's not a meth lab.
By the way, Tom, I did send you a Facebook message with those charts and a request.
Roger that. Thank you, sir.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, we're at the 3 hour mark.
3 hour. We're going to wrap it up. And so I'm just going to real quick. We're not going to open big discussion here. Just real
like
quick.
the last time.
Yeah. Around the panel.
Here we go again.
We talked for 6 hours last time. You remember that? We talked for 6 hours, man.
That's fine but not for live. I mean, we can keep going, but so real quick around the panel, I'll just I'll do the generic asking 30 seconds for each person. What do you think we're dealing with? What is this phenomenon likely? Let's just say likely, we don't know, blah, 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 or maybe we do. I don't know. Likely, what are we dealing with out there in the woods with the Bigfoot phenomena? And we're going to start with Steve Kulls and go around the horn. Steve.
We are dealing with an undiscovered primate, be it a pangolin or hominin. I'm not sure, but I know it's a primate just based on what I've seen, with the descriptions have been in the past, and its behaviors. Thank you.
Oh, you gave us an extra 20 seconds for our answer. Keep going.
What I'm designing my investigations for when I'm out in the field is to try to pique the curiosity of an intelligent primate.
All right, Thomas?
In my opinion, I think we're dealing with a flesh and blood animal, a primate, an unclassified species of higher primate. And if it isn't that, it is strictly North American folklore and mythology.
Fair enough.
I also believe it's a flesh and blood primate, but I believe it also might have some, supernatural abilities. Not necessarily paranormal, but supernatural.
Leon.
I think it's something that lives, breathes, and walks, and is flesh. As far as that, that's all I know. So,
and poops and sends that poop to.
Well, I can't say that. I've never seen that.
Sends that poop carefully.
Yeah,
Bigfoot.
Well, it must leave poopery somewhere. I would think, not poopery.
Okay, again.
Poopery.
PO Box 14.
Yeah. What's Meldrum's address again?
It's online.
Hey, the P.O. box is getting a little ripe again.
Do not send poop to Meldrum. Oh my God, I don't want to be that guy. Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for coming on. Every single one of you. Thomas, Steve, Russell, Steve Kulls, Leon. We had Brent here, and I don't know, somebody else.
Patrick.
Oh yeah. That guy. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
Thanks guys for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And man, you're welcome here anytime. Russell. And Steve Kulls, which this is your third appearance on my show. So you guys are all welcome. Great discussion tonight. I'd love to keep it going, but
apparently Brent is the only one with a social life.
Social life? What is that?
It's an oxymoron.
But yeah, thanks guys. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. We're gonna end the show, and thanks chat and everybody for watching tonight. Good audience. Appreciate you all, every single one of you, even you, Bigfoot Anon. You're welcome here, bud. And we will have that flat Earth debate. So we'll make that happen, bro. You and me.
Yeah, I think you might have lost him.
Yeah. Well, I told him earlier in chat. Yeah. Man, we'll do that. And but great show tonight. Appreciate you guys being here again. Great discussion as always. We'll wrap it up. And thanks everybody for watching. We will see you next time. Later.